Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our regularly scheduled board meeting, and it turns out our last regularly scheduled board meeting for 2006. If you would please stand and join me in our flag salute and remain standing for a moment of silence. Ready? Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated.
Steve, I think somebody from the planning or resource management is going to make the introduction on Millie.
Okay. This morning on our consent calendar, which we will take up in a few moments, we have two different members of our planning commission will be upping for their time on the Planning Commission. We very much appreciate their service. Actually, there's three of them, I'm sorry. But before we do that, at 9 o'clock this morning, we want to recognize John Milwee for his service on the Planning Commission. I believe someone from the RMA is going to make a presentation. And am I wrong? I don't see anyone that's going to stepping up.
Yes, are spinning though.
Then we will proceed. Oh, Henry's standing up. Henry? George?
Somebody.
Someone's coming up. Two of them are coming up.
Yeah.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members. Henry Hash, Resource Management Agency. I certainly wasn't planning on it, but we'll be happy to do so. I think perhaps more appropriate if Mr. Finney makes some comments, because he has been working with Commissioner Milwee for a long time. All I can say that we know how important Planning Commission is, and his services really have been greatly appreciated. He brought to us wealth of experience, 25 years in the Planning Commission, and so he has seen just about everything has been seen. So he's going to be greatly missed.
All right. And George, yes, you've been with him since a child, have you not, George?
Since before that. But no, I think Henry said it all. I think I like to see John work his 25th year, actually, because he's actually put in 24 years. But believe me, that's plenty. I believe that is the record. I don't believe any other planning commissioner in the history of the Tulare County Planning Commission has served longer than John Milwee. Done a remarkable job in representing his area, and also all the citizens of Tulare County and the work that he's done. So really appreciate his work.
And someone else has gotten up who just could not constrain themselves and had to speak in his favor.
And I want this meeting to go on as long as possible so you can really enjoy your day. But
thank you, Mr. Whitlatch.
I would be
Please give us your name and address.
I'm Bill Whitlatch, 525 West Center, and I'm the outgoing chairperson for the Tulare County Planning Commission. I'd just like to thank John for the wealth of knowledge. He has really been a mentor to me. He retired from Orange County. I asked him one time, I said, what's the most houses you built in any one year? And of course I was expecting 100 or 200, and he said something like over 5,000. Well, he retired, he came here, and given these 24 years of service to Tulare County and those experiences in a fast-growing place like Orange County. And I just want to thank you personally, John. Thank you very much for your service.
I've asked Supervisor Maples to please make a presentation to John. If you please come forward to this microphone. We would like to record this, so I've asked Supervisor Maples to use the microphone there. He likes to keep his back to us anyway. So.
Well, it's a pleasure to recognize my little brother. The good thing in our district is that many times in public meetings, if John gets there first, they think it's me. And if I see that it's a good meeting, I come on in. If it's a bad meeting, I just kind of ease into the back and let John handle the heat. It is a personal pleasure, as well as the member of the 5th District Supervisor representing the district, John was appointed 24 years ago by Supervisor Ben Webb. He then served under Ben for a number of years, then under Supervisor Gary Reed, and then Supervisor Bill Buckley, who died in office, and then I came on in 1992. So I've had 15 years of service with John. John, on a personal basis, we've had a lot of activity during the course of your term. You've always been there as an anchor. We've watched the developments with the Planning Commission previous to it coming to the board, and many, many times the common sense approach has always been your contribution. It's my pleasure on behalf of the Tulare County Board of Supervisors, John, to present you with the county seal. I've said this many times, and I say it today, that the county seal is the highest honor that the Board of Supervisors can bestow on an individual. So, John, it's my pleasure to present you this plaque on behalf of the board, previous boards as well as present. Mr. John Milwee, Tulare County Planning Commission. Mr. Milwee's longevity stands as a tribute to his leadership, his commitment, and dedication to the people of Tulare County. He has provided a consistent, principled, and common sense approach to issues, dealing with growth and land use while protecting our agricultural base. Tulare County Board of Supervisors honor Mr. Milwee and extend our best wishes on his retirement. Appointed January 1, 1984, retired December 31st, 2006. John, our agreement was that you would stay as long as I stayed. I thought seriously about running another 4 years. I would have really wondered what your commitment would have been. John, it's my pleasure as a friend and as a member representing the Board of Supervisors of Tulare County, present you with this plaque. Thank you.
Mr. Milwee, we'd like to hear from you this morning, sir, if you have any words of wisdom for us.
Not really. I think we've just about done it all. It's been a pleasure for me. And since I see a lot of the commissioners here, maybe we should turn this into a joint session. Thank you very much, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah.
I would also ask that we recognize this morning John's wife, Betty, who has contributed. So Betty,
Thank you, Mr. Maples. At this time, item number 2 is a review, modification, and adoption of proposed 2007 state legislative and regulatory platform. And I believe we have here this morning Mr. Yoder from a lobbying firm in Sacramento. Welcome, sir.
Morning, board members.
And you are being recorded, so we would like you to state your name and address for the record, please.
Paul Yoder with Strategic Local Government Services. Nice to see you all today. Happy holidays. I'm going to touch briefly on the bonds, the situation regarding the bonds in Sacramento, the budget, briefly, a couple bills that we want to bring to the board's attention that have already been introduced, and then you have your 2007 legislative program before you for adoption. What do you do when you have over 1/3 of the legislature that's going to be brand spanking new? Well, you divvy up $40 billion in bonds, you deal with universal health care, you deal with prison reform, and you deal with things like redistricting. To put it, it's going to be quite a year. Let's just put it that way. On the bonds front, first I want to talk about all the money that is in the transportation bond, much of which I think Tulare County is going to see because the self-help sales tax passed. There is the $1 billion pot that'll go out to self-help counties, so-called self-help counties. There's $2 billion to augment the state transportation improvement program. There's $1 billion for county streets and roads, and that is all good news. All that money is going to flow statewide, and a lot of that money is going to come into Tulare County. There's also obviously the $1 billion earmark for Highway 99, and I want to make sure the board and the public here in Tulare County are aware of the fact that it does take a 2/3 vote of the legislature to appropriate that $1 billion. And secondly, and probably more importantly, that the pro tem of the Senate, Don Parada, has made it very, very clear that he's ready to leverage or try to leverage Valley legislators on other issues in exchange for getting a 2/3 vote to appropriate the money on Highway 99. So it's going to be an interesting year. It's going to be a long year. It's going to be a tough year. because these issues are going to be intertwined, whether we want them to be or not, unfortunately. But that money is in the bond, is approved by the voters. In the area of water, the estimated cost to really address the levee needs in the state of California is approximately $12 billion. There was nowhere near that in the levee bond that was passed by the voters, but the voters also passed Proposition 84. And what that does is put more money in what I will call the levee pot to be dispersed throughout California. And I think the real effect for the valley of that is that you will see money flow south of Tracy. I think you will see some money come in to the more southern part of the valley because the voters passed Proposition 84. The Department of Water Resources has already made it clear that because there is additional funds, there are additional funds, that they are going to do whatever they can to get some money south of Tracy, at least for mapping and perhaps for some other things, perhaps for some levee construction that wouldn't have otherwise happened if the voters hadn't passed Proposition 84. Also, still on the subject of levees, I think the board members remember that last year there was a big battle on levees and the liability for levees and what local governments had to do if there was construction behind levees. Assemblyman Jones, who had the liability last year, has already reintroduced his measure, and that's AB 70, and it's one of the bills that I wanted to make the county aware of today. In addition to Assemblyman Jones's bill, the Department of Water Resources has made it clear that in the distribution of the levee bond funds and in the distribution of any levee-related Prop 84 monies, that they will probably, at a minimum, consider as a criteria for funding whether or not local governments are willing to accept the responsibility and the liability if a levee should fail. Maybe not a mandate, but a criteria for funding instead, which I think ultimately has just about the same effect for local government, unfortunately. So we're going to be watching that very closely. I want to point out to the board, last year the levee liability issue was really an assembly issue. This year you're going to see the Senate weigh in. Another bill I want to make the board aware of is SB 5 by Senator Machado. Senator Machado has made it very, very clear that the Senate will be heard from this year on the issue of levees. And I think you're going to see a more bicameral approach on this issue this year, and maybe even a little competition in terms of whose version of what the world ought to look like ultimately prevails. But SB 5 by Senator Machado is another bill to really be watching right now. If I could move to the budget, I don't know if there are any questions about the bonds.
Any questions, members?
Okay, on the issue of the budget, I know the board members know that we're looking at about a $5 billion deficit. There are rumors that the Department of Finance has been going through the State Department's budgets, department by department, program by program, looking for monies that can be found to help address the budget deficit. A couple rumors that relate to county specifically that I will pass along. In the area of Proposition 36, there is a rumor going around that the governor may propose, instead of Proposition 36, to really start moving people into what's called the offender treatment program. And the effect of that for the counties would be that you would have a match. You would expect to have a match and a much greater match than has been the case with Proposition 36 funding that has flowed over the years, because until last year that has flowed without a match requirement whatsoever. However, on the plus side of things, I think you're going to see the governor and ultimately the legislature respond favorably in the area of adult probation and supervision of adult probationers. The governor may propose somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 million in the budget year to enhance probation services, supervisory services, and then in the out years bump that up to $100 million in 08-09 and 09-010, hopefully. And I think largely that's in response to the passage by the voters of Jessica's law, but also by some pretty effective lobbying by the probation officers throughout the state of California. And then the other thing I would mention positively in terms of rumors that we're hearing on the budget is that the governor is going to propose a fairly sizable bond, and it's not. I think it's probably going to be a lease revenue bond of some sort, but a pretty sizable bond for adult facilities and for juvenile facilities, for detention facilities. The exact size of that isn't something we've heard yet. And again, I don't think that's going to be a GO bond. I think you would expect that to be a lease revenue bond proposed by the governor. Budget will be out on January 10th. I'll be back here in January to walk the board members through that, if that's the will of the board. And before we go into the 2007 legislative program, there are two other bills I want to make sure I mention today. AB 27 by Assemblywoman Parra. That would create the California Partnership for the Central Valley. That's largely a reintroduction of her AB 31 from last year. I think board members will recall that bill. And AB 41 by Assemblyman LaMalfa, which would propose that of the water-related bond funds that were approved by the voters, that a significant portion of that money be used to create some additional surface storage in the state of California, and that's AB 41 by Assemblyman LaMalfa. With that,
Any questions from members? Proceed.
okay. With that, you have the 2007 legislative program before you. I want to say, I want to commend the board collectively and individually. I want to commend the staff. A lot of work has been put into this, just in terms of re-vetting all the proposals and making sure that every single thing in here is really something that the county wants to pursue and that the board wants to pursue, and that there's a value in pursuing it for us in Sacramento. And I think a lot of good work has been put in over the last couple months. And so I would commend this document to you, but obviously it's your document. You can amend it, you can add things, you can delete things as you wish. It's a living, breathing document, and it's your document. So that's before you today for adoption.
Questions from members about that? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the platform.
Move to approval.
Second.
Cast your votes. Vote is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Yoder.
Thank you, board members.
It's always a pleasure to have you here with us.
Always a pleasure to see you.
Look forward to hearing back from you again in January.
With good news.
I hope. This time we will take up our consent calendar. These are items 8 through 40. I would ask you to consider modifying number 29 and number 36 because those we're still awaiting documents, and so we would leave them on the agenda, just adding the language that I would be authorized to sign them after we have had the approval of our county council on the agreements. Also, item 25, we will need to handle separately, as Supervisor Cox will recuse himself from that item because of his being on the first 5 commission. And we also have included in here the addendum item as well. Are there any other items which would need to be addressed separately by board members?
Chairman, I would move approval of consent calendar items 29, 30 with the corrected language, pulling item 25, and adding the addendum to the motion.
That is 29 and 36.
29,
36. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. And the vote is unanimous. Mr. Cox is now leaving the dais. Request action on item 25.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. Votes are unanimous. Mr. Cox is invited to come back and join his colleagues at the dais. Welcome back, Mr. Cox. We have a little time before our 9:30 timed items, so we will go to our untimed items. And that would, first item is number 41, a request from Tulare County Fire Department to designate a number of all of our fire stations that are staffed year-round as safe baby surrender sites. Morning, Chief.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Ed Riston, your contracted county fire chief, fire warden for a few more months. We're here today presenting agenda item requesting that 17 county fire stations be identified and designated as safe baby surrender sites. California has joined 40 other states in responding to the problems of parents abandoning unwanted newborns in unsafe places, thereby leaving their babies at risk. Through the enactment of Senate Bill 1368, a parent or person having lawful custody of a newborn is granted immunity from criminal prosecution for abandonment if the newborn, up to 72 hours old, is delivered to an employee on duty in a hospital emergency room or other location designated by the County Board of Supervisors. Many counties throughout the state have designated their fire stations as safe baby surrender sites. As of October 2006, 162 newborns have been safely surrendered in California, while another 139 infants have been found alive following their illegal abandonment. A parent feeling the need to abandon a baby may not have the means to transport that baby to one of 3 hospitals, emergency rooms located within Tulare County. Tulare County Fire Department has fire stations located in or within close proximity to many of the communities throughout the county. Tulare County Fire Department employees are trained to provide emergency care to the sick and injured. Designating Tulare County fire stations as safe baby surrender sites will increase the number of receiving locations from 3 to 20 countywide. This designation will afford the citizens of rural communities the same opportunities as those who live in larger incorporated cities. Fire stations will be provided a door sticker identifying the station as a safe baby surrender site, safe baby surrender kits containing identifying ankle bracelets, questionnaires and forms will also be provided. Cost of these items are negligible and will be purchased from fire department budget. The alternatives continue to operate with only the hospital emergency rooms as approved surrender sites. We have discussed this procedure and policy with County Council and Health and Human Services Agency, Child Welfare Services, as well as the 3 hospitals. I would recommend your approval of this item.
Thank you, Chief. I know this was somewhat triggered by recent events up in my district in the Cutler-Rossi community where a child was discovered, unfortunately, too late. And that one of the surrender sites would be our fire station located in the community of Cutler. And it should be noted also that with the demise of the Alta Hospital in Dinuba, the closest hospital for the northern part of the county would be in Visalia, some 15, 20 miles away, and so certainly this is a significant factor and a good reason for us to do this, particularly in the northern part of the county, but elsewhere, as you say, because oftentimes these are situations where we're talking about indigents or folks who do not have transportation and minor parents, perhaps, who make these decisions sometimes very spontaneously. So having these designated sites is certainly a very significant safety for those newborns, and I thank you for bringing it to our attention this morning. Are there any questions or comments? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add, too, that we're also exploring various mechanisms for getting this word out to the public through media outlets and things of that nature. So we'll be bringing something forward to you in the event of good news on the part of the chief. Now it's a matter of how to get that good news out.
I did have one question, and that is that we are designating these sites. Obviously, we have jurisdiction over these sites, but I was thinking about it, for instance, in my Dinuba, where they do not have a hospital, and the nearest fire department that we're designating would still be some 3 or 4 miles away from the community. If the city were to designate a site, do they have the authority to do that as a city, or is that something the county would need to do?
Chief could probably add to that. I could conjecture, but Chief, that's your realm.
Well, I can only draw a few conclusions from what I've read, and it would certainly take legal advisement. But as I read it, the board is the approving authority. That would, if a city wanted to do it, whatever procedures they took to have the approval of their city to bring that information forward to the board, then the board could designate a city fire station or other locations as safe surrender baby sites. And I'm getting a nod here, so
Well, I might just add then, Chief, that I would request that you perhaps contact our incorporated cities within the county to ask them if they're interested in participating in this, and then this might be brought back at a later time to include additional sites.
Chief Shute is here from Dinuba. We've had discussions with him. I can't speak for him, but I would expect we may be back with some additional requests before too long.
And I can see where this would be an issue with the city councils because they would need to weigh in on this matter.
Certainly.
But certainly, again, it makes sense to try to make this broad-based, especially if we're going to designate fire stations. I mean, the idea that we would get all fire stations within a county on board probably has a great deal of sense.
I want to add that the 17 sites that are identified here are our staff stations. We have not designated the all paid call stations where there's not somebody present. Part of this procedure is a physical handoff to the recognized authority. So the all volunteer or paid call stations are not identified on this list.
And I'll just also add, Mr. Chairman, that at the next city managers meeting, this would be a great topic to bring up of coordination.
Just one quick comment. This is one of the, as I was reading this, Chief, this was a feel-good, do the right thing kind of thing to do. And for me, all you got to do is save one, and any amount of money we would spend would be well worth it. So good job. I'm glad to see this come before us.
Well, I need to make sure and acknowledge one person in our department who has pushed this, and that's Battalion Chief Mike Davidson. He has been the driving force for this, and I want to acknowledge Mike. Stand up, Mike. He's the one that has made sure that this happened. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Chairman, I think it's appropriate because Tulare County still struggles with teenage pregnancy, and we have for many, many years. Chief, coming in this morning, I listened to one of the radio stations, and they were making a great deal out of the fact that a person bringing in a baby would be given a receipt. I would assume that if that is correct, that the receipt would be for some kind of protection of the person bringing the child in, acknowledging that this person is not.
Yes, sir.
So I think it's important that, and I'll give them a call.
This is from one of the local hospitals. Ours, we were expecting them in the mail yesterday. Anytime an ankle or a wrist bracelet is placed on the infant, corresponding number is given to the parent or guardian. As you read in your package, they have 14 days if they change their mind. These numbered bracelets that go to the infant and to the parent or guardian are what ties those two folks together. So.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Any other comments, questions?
No, Mr. Chairman, it would seem to me an easy commitment on behalf of this board and our chief and our fire services to make, as Supervisor Cox said, even if it saves one child, an easy commitment to make. If there's no other comments or questions, then I would definitely move approval.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. And the vote is unanimous. Thank you, Chief. Thank you for those who are in attendance this morning on this particular matter. And thank you also, Mr. Davis, for bringing it to our attention. This time we'll take up our timed items. And first, item number 3 is a public hearing request from the fire department to conduct a public hearing for fire hazard abatement cost recovery. Morning, Penny. It's not only your last appearance this year. It's your last appearance until next season, I think.
Next season. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Penny Green. I'm the Hazard Abatement Officer for Tulare County Fire Department. Tulare County Fire Department is requesting the board to order the costs associated with the abatement of fire hazards to be recorded in the office of the county recorder as a lien. The contractor's cost plus administrative fees came to a total of $10,718 for the cleanup of 14 parcels throughout Tulare County. We request that the county auditor place such cost on the county tax roll as special assessment. Last, we request the board to adopt the attached resolution with Exhibit A, parcel analysis, and Exhibit B, the proposed nuisance abatement lien. can I answer any questions for you this morning?
Any questions of members?
I have, Penny, several of these, looking here, 1,811, 1,311. How large of parcels are those?
5 acres.
So those are 5-acre parcels. Okay.
If I can, Chair, as I look at the hourly rate as well, I've had lots cleaned off in the past. The hourly rate is very reasonable for what we're doing here. So I think you're to be commended on the contractor that you found to do this work at such a rate, because this just isn't the contractor. This is equipment as well going out, and I would assume disking under, so a tractor and things of that nature. So that's a very reasonable rate for what's being done. So I would hope no one's thinking that we are gouging or overcharging for the services. The $50 is a very reasonable rate from what I've been used to paying in the past. So I'm going to ask you who your contractor is after the meeting.
Well, I think, too, that we need to make the statement, this is not a business we want to be in, that we don't go out searching for these kinds of responsibilities, but due to the concerns we have with fire and others, Penny, it's a tough job, but at the same time, it's a necessity. And so we commend you as well for the effort you've made.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman, I would move approval.
It's a public hearing, Mr. Maples, so
Apologize.
before we can act on it. We'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to address the board on this matter is invited to come forward and give us your name and address. Seeing and hearing no one, I will close the public comment period. Now I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move approval. Item 3 is recommended, 1A, B, C, D is recommended by Tulare County Fire Department.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. Vote is unanimous. Thank you, Penny.
Thank you.
Have a Merry Christmas.
You too. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Item number 4 is another public hearing, a request from the Resource Management Agency to approve the establishment of one new farmland security zone contract. Contained report for case number PSZ 06-001.
Morning again, members of the board. Again, George Finney with the Tulare County Resource Management Agency. As you know, the Farmland Security Zone program is the option that landowners have for qualified lands to, rather than a 10-year contract, to request a 20-year contract. Sometimes this is referred to as the Super Williamson Act program. This year we only had one application, 30 and a half acres owned by Lebu Ranches. It's all in a farming operation located northwest of Woodlake, and the staff is recommending approval. And as you'll note in the report, this approval, we have approximately 10,500 acres of lands under the 20-year program. Any questions?
Are there any questions from members? Not. This is another item for public hearing. Anyone wishing to address the matter, please come forward and give us your name and address. Item number 4. Seeing and hearing no one, we will close the public comment period, bring it back to the board for action.
Mr. Chairman, I realize this is in your district, but on your behalf, I would move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. Votes unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Penny. Bring us to item number 5, a request from the Resource Management Agency to deny the appeal and waiver of the $300 filing fee request by Mr. and Mrs. Librado Valdez, and uphold the decision of the Administrative Hearing Officer on violation B 498-001.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Do you have an interpreter available for the applicant if they wish it?
All right. There is an interpreter available. I see someone coming forward at this time. Do we know if an interpreter is needed? No. No. All right. Very good. Mr. Kendall? Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Bruce Kendall, Code Compliance Manager for Resource Management Agency. As already stated, that this is a 2-item appeal today concerning the waiver of the $300 filing fee, and also to have a decision overturned that our hearing officer had made. What I want to do is start off with a brief summary of this violation and bring the board up to speed on what's going on. On January 5th, 1998, Bruce Kendall, voting zoning inspector at the time, inspected the site and found that there was a Ramada installed over the top of a railroad car without building permit. The railroad car was determined to be legal because of an earlier violation from 1991 on this site. There was also a bathhouse constructed behind the main dwelling without building permits. And then on January 13th, 1998, the property owner, Ms. Valdez, indicated to Mr. Kendall that she was going to intend on obtaining the required building permits or demolition permit and remove the offending structures. Approximately 1 week later, her daughter contacted our office and met with our plans examiner to submit plans, and it was determined the plans were inadequate for building permits. And then on August 17th in year 2000, Mr. Kendall inspected the site and found that the remodeled railroad car and the bathhouse were still in place. On August 29th of 2003, Yolanda Valdez, the daughter of the current owner, had contacted our office and was going to work on removing this violation. At that time, RMA did offer the amnesty program to allow building permits to be issued with no fines attached to them. No permits were ever obtained. On September 26, 2005, I once again inspected the site and found that the violations continued, took photographs of the site, and left a notice and order with the property owners and his grandson. On October 19, 2005, we did have the administrative hearing which were convened in our Planning Commission room at RMA. The owners were present. The code compliance agreement was offered to the Valdezes to bring this property into 180 days compliance. There would be no fines. Only the fees that would be associated with it would be due. This was signed by the owners on October 19, 2005. On April 13, 2006, building permit for the bathhouse, which was under permit A06013004, was submitted to the building division of RMA. This application was 165 days after the code compliance agreement for 180 days was submitted and signed by the owners. Routinely, permits take 4 to 6 weeks to be issued, so thus this is really an untimely submission. To date, that building permit has never been picked up. As of this morning, I did check our computer system, found that the building permit is still pending. The owners have been notified in July of this year. In addition to that, there was a remodel that was picked up after the code compliance agreement had expired. To today's date, that same permit has never received one inspection and is now expired due to time.
If I may, sure. When was the building permit approved?
Building permits were approved on April 13, 2006. It was approved and paid for by the property owners. That permit has not received any inspections. On May 2, 2006, I sent one of my staff inspectors, Joseph Phillip, to the site for a follow-up inspection to determine if the code compliance agreement had items abated as per the agreement or if they were still in site. This is 195 days after the 180-day agreement had been signed. Mr. Phillips determined that there was still solid waste on the site. There's still one inoperative vehicle, which is all part of our complaints, that there was 2 buildings still on site with no building permits issued for them. On May 18, 2006, Mr. and Mrs. Valdez asked for an appeal before the administrative hearing officer to appeal their time that they've been given, asking for additional time. That appeal was heard in our office again on June 21, 2006. The hearing officer at that time determined there was not sufficient evidence for him to overturn a previous decision, and that's what brings us here today.
Are there any questions, Mr. Kendall? If not, this is a public hearing. We will open the public hearing, and would you please give us your name and address?
My name is Isabel Carlin, and
Rosalba G. Valdez. Nora Peña Valdez.
And our address is 10099 and a half Avenue 424 in Dinuba. And as he stated, they did give us a lot of time to do this, but it was also occurred while the floodings, and we had a lot of floodings, and we have videotapes that we've brought to show. And my parents are elderly, and they have spent most of their savings on cleaning up the property and doing the modifications that they've asked. We did get the permit of the Ramada in late, because we didn't exactly understand the whole process of the whole thing. And we have the permit for the Ramada, and we've called for inspections, and for some reason or another, they have not showed up. We don't know if we don't, what's the problem with them not coming. And we haven't gotten the bathhouse permit and the other building permit that we asked for since July or beyond, no, since April. We received one in July, but we didn't receive the second one as of now. And nobody has ever contacted us by phone or mail, from what I understand.
So what you're saying that as of today, you were not aware that this permit was ready to be picked up from the
the
plant?
second one. We were aware of the first one, and that one we have done the modifications on both, actually. Meanwhile, we were trying to repair what they've asked us to repair. And as of today, I'm just finding out now is when he said that it was ready to be picked up. Nobody has contacted us to be picked up.
Mr. Chair?
Anything else you want to say before Mr. Cox?
We've done a lot of the cleaning already, and I know that they've gone back to check, and so my parents that's why my father's not here today, because he's very ill, and he's had shoulder surgery, and he's had to have shoulder surgery because of all the lifting and everything else that he's had to do it at the property. And I don't know what else they are asking of us, but I mean, we've done as much as we can as of today for the cleaning and everything.
You say some of the work has been done. Have you called for inspections?
Yes, we have, and nobody has gone to go clear the Ramada. All the timber that was on there has been replaced, whatever was bad, and we've called for inspection to see if there's anything else that needs to be done to it, and nobody has appeared to have gone. I myself called twice for inspections.
Did you indicate that you had something you want to present it to the board this morning as far as photos or something?
Well, we do have the building permit that we picked up for the Ramada, and we do have photographs of the cleaning and also a videotape from the floodings that have occurred during the time that they asked us to clean up the property. All of this stuff has been, my dad, this has been sold. Now it's all cleaned up the way it used to look. This is the way it used to look. It looks sad. One of them, no, this is the way it looks now and the way it used to look prior.
Okay. Can we put those on the overhead, maybe? So we can all see them?
Might be faster if you want to do that. Show the ones before and then show the ones after. While she's doing that, we're going to try to put this on the overhead. Can you tell us when the pictures, the ones before the work was done, can you tell us when the after ones were done, as far as when that cleanup was done?
The after ones, it was during the summer.
All right.
The after ones, and it's been maintained since like that. They've even hired a gardener and everything, keep the property cleaned.
While we're bringing that up, Mr. Chair, well, I'm trying to flip through. I know I saw it. When was the first violation issued? Mr. Kendall?
Instead of taking the time of the board, the first violation would have been issued almost immediately after this violation was initiated, would have been 1998. So if you need the exact date, I can go through my file and determine it.
Well, that's why because I knew it was in here. So 1998 is the first violation.
This is actually the very first violation of 1998, so I would imagine it's pretty close to January of 1998.
Thank you.
Chairman, could I ask Bruce, during the period of time, has any of the violations been corrected, to your knowledge? Since 1998, has there been anything?
No. Because 1998, that's why we finally went to administrative hearing in the year 2005, because we had not received any compliance from the owners.
Basically, the concern we have is that in January in '98, today, the last of '06, we still have the same complaints in those eight years.
That is correct. We had solid waste on the site, we had inoperative vehicles, and we also had the construction without building permits.
These are the photographs that were taken before cleanup apparently occurred.
Is that correct?
Right.
That's the testimony. If while they're showing these pictures, if you would point out to us the actual violations.
Okay, your lower right-hand picture there would be the bathhouse. That is the one permit that's still pending, has not been picked up. Okay. The lower left-hand photograph is a photograph of the railroad car with the Ramada over the top of it. Most of the inoperative vehicles are along the front of the property, adjacent to the fence on Avenue 424, and there was just general debris around the site.
And ma'am, if you'd like to say something, I don't mean to, you're welcome to comment about them too.
Okay, the back house, that our house that he says, it's like a storage. That's a storage. It has a toilet and it has a shower, which the former owners built it there because they had a house there and it was torn down when my parents moved this house that they live in now. That outhouse been there for approximately maybe more than 30 years. It was, I guess, made out of wood, and then they stuccoed it. But now it's cleaned out. My mom has shelves in there only for pots and pans or whatever she has in there. There's no chemicals in there. And we painted it to look exactly like the house. Like my sister says, nobody has gone back to check and see or talk to us. They just gone over around the property and taken pictures, but actually have not gone to talk to us, to let them in, to show them what they have done. I personally have done it. And the Ramada, that was also built by the former owners. And my parents, until all this started, they had no knowledge. They did not have no permit.
They were built with permits. They just
Yeah.
never got the final inspections.
The final inspection.
On those permits with the former owner. But they did have permits, but they just never gotten the final on them. They never called for a final, the previous owners. So my parents kept on seeing, and we had gone, and they said, yeah, it has a permit, but they never explained to us that it had never been called for a final permit. Inspection, exactly.
But that was from the former...
From the former owners. So even when we went back to the former owner and we said, why did you build this without permits? He said it does have permits, and he gave them to my mom at that time, and it showed that he did have permits, but we never caught the fact that it didn't have a final on them.
Now, these are some more photographs of before. Mr. Kendall, any comments about these?
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening.
Oh, any comments? These are 4 other photographs.
No, I've been watching. They're pretty much consistent with what we had out in the site.
All right.
I do have one more
Yes,
question
Mr.
for
Cox.
Mr. Kendall. Did this same information come up during the other hearing before the hearing officer?
No, it did not.
Thank you.
Now, my records show that in 1998, Ms. Valdez granted to the grant title, it was to both her and her husband, so I don't have a previous ownership before 1998. I do know that we were out here in 1991, current owners, for a previous violation.
Grant deeds 99. You said 98.
Are any other photos before? These are the after photos then? Okay, can you show us those? Are these after photos here now we're looking at? Oh, okay. All right. So that's
Yes.
all the photographs?
Yes. Also, I would like to state that my dad had all these, like he says, vehicles, abandoned vehicles. They weren't abandoned. They were just antique old trucks, which they gotten rid of, taken to a junkyard when they were valued to him. But since he's so already upset about all this, he just went and took them to a junkyard when they were worth money to him, And all, he sold his antique truck that he paid $7,000 to repair it, and which is that one, and, you know, he practically gave it away because,
For the same reason.
the same reason.
They keep on saying that he has a lot of vehicles and a lot of vehicles, and so he has given, taken a lot of vehicles to the recycling center, and that particular truck that he really cared for, he sold it.
And, he's, yeah, he did have coolers, swamp coolers, because that's what he used to do on his spare time, fix
That was
them
a hobby.
and, and sell them. But that was in Hazardous because that's what he does. He doesn't work. He just fixes them, whatever he knows how to do. But he got rid of that too. And there's nothing hazardous about having things like that. It's 4 acres. I mean, people just donated things to him to repair or like that. But otherwise, it was like the county just went out there and said, well, you have vehicles are leaking oil. They weren't leaking oil in the property. They weren't to be turning fire or anything like that would cause a hazard to anybody else. If that was true, my dad has emphysema and, and bad lungs. So if that was true, he would have been, way gone right now. He's 76 years old, but this property is what he keeps on doing what he can. All of us, we're all grown up, yeah. We all live out. I'm disabled. I do help out with whatever. I was in bed for 2 weeks after I helped them, redo the ramada in the back room. But,
We live in a fixed income, and that's basically why we're here, to discuss the fees that they're charging us, because they are extremely, for the income that my parents live on, it's a lot of fees. The amount of the fees is a lot, and that's why we're here, to see if you guys can give us a break on the fees, because they can't afford to pay them all at once or in a long period of time as well.
Right. Thank you. And I was going to ask Mr. Kendall that. We did not have that presented to us as far as what are the actual dollar amounts that we're dealing with this morning.
The original code compliance agreement, fines and penalties were at $9,000, but this is one of our old agreements. Upon entering into this code compliance agreement, it was agreed to these fines would be reduced to $7,000 with an $800 cost for recovery cost. So at this point, it's $7,800.
And those were signed by the property owners?
Pardon?
The agreements were signed by the property owners?
That is correct, by both property owners.
Thank you.
what do you mean, were they agreed to pay that amount?
Yes, they did.
¿Usted estuvo de acuerdo de pagar $7,000 de fianza?
Nunca dijeron que 900 dijeron que íbamos a pagar de la corte, de la primer.
Pero
De 7,000 no.
Era porque si no limpiaban para el día 20 de abril.
Sí, si no limpiábamos.
I'm asking her if she agreed to pay that amount. And she said that she only had recalls paying the 800? 900 for the court fee, but not for the fine. But we understood, when she signed, I think she understood that only if she didn't clean the property, she would pay that fine, not because of,
If she didn't clean by April.
yeah.
My name is Sheriff. Ms. Valdez, I've got a copy of the code agreement in front of me, signed by both parties, that states you agree that it'll be reduced from 9,000 to 7,000.
Yeah.
But this is if you clean the property up.
By April, yeah, but because of the weathers and stuff that
Well,
we have.
she said she doesn't remember signing it. I've got her signature.
No, she signed it.
By a notary here that says that she agrees to pay the $7,000.
Y es lo que está preguntando. Yeah, she's aware of it, because I was there that day and I explained to them about that. And that's why I'm asking for those fees to be reduced. My sister wasn't there that day, but I was.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments?
I
Mr.
guess for,
Nichols?
ma'am, for clarity, you're now asking that the 7,000 be reduced, is that correct?
Yes.
And how are you addressing what started back in 1998 with you, What is your intent on trying to meet the requirement? We're not trying to get the money
Right.
purposely.
The reason I'm
But if
saying
we don't
is-
put any teeth into it, we have no authority at all. So my question to you basically is, you're asking, it went from 9 to 7, now you're asking for the 7 to be reduced. And my question to our staff person was, has there been anything done from the original date of 98 up to now that would lend the feeling that you're trying to solve the problem that started way back then? The money part is of importance to us because of enforcement, but it's more important to us to clean the site up.
We have cleaned the site up, and my parents live on a very fixed income, and even then, they've stretched as much as they can, and
But what are you going to do? Let's assume the board is willing to reduce this, and I'm not too sure they are, but let's assume that we did reduce it. We're going to come back here 6 months, a year from now, and still not have the place cleaned up?
no, it wouldn't be that.
I mean, that's what, because there's been all kinds of agreements as indicated here that you've agreed to, but we've never got to the point that this board's concerned about, and that's cleaning up the site. That's the
Site
part
has
that's
been
important to
cleaned up.
us.
The
Yeah.
site has been cleaned up, and that's.
But it hasn't been cleaned up to satisfy the requirements.
But we've asked for them to come out and to tell us what else, because, I mean, to my parents, I guess it seems that it's been prior from the way it was to the way it was now. I mean, there is a difference, isn't there, Bruce?
Have you gone out?
No, I have not. I have staff people go out. We have not been out to visit the site again since the failure of the code compliance agreement in May.
There
We
has been
do
a lot of
util-
cleaning and a lot of recycling and a lot of, I mean, all the metals that was out there, it's all been cleaned up.
Again, just getting down to trying to help make a decision.
Right.
What are you indicating if we reduce it down? What are you going to do if we would reduce
Well,
it
we
down?
must maintain it. Like I said, my parents have even gone and hired a gardener so that the house looks
How much time?
Maintenance and-
How much time to meet the requirement that originally started in 98?
If I may clarify, I think the issue is whether or not it's cleaned up can be determined by an inspection, but there are the building permit issues. One, a final inspection on one, the other has not been picked up and has not been done. So that probably is the matter that obviously would take additional time and has yet to be completed. That's not cleaning up, that's finishing up the process of these building permits and being done with them, and that's not yet been
Well, I'll
accomplished.
call again for inspection and make sure that they come. If they don't come, then I'll call and call and call until somebody shows up.
And you need to pick up that other, application
Get out
if
there
you're going to
right
pursue
now,
that.
since we just are informed as of today that that was ready to be picked up.
Well, Mr. Chair, is it my understanding that's expired?
That is expired. It automatically expires up to 6 months after issuance, so they'll have to make arrangements with the building department to renew that. All their phone calls must go to a computer for scheduling. It's not even a person that answers the phone anymore.
But I can call Glenn McIntyre, because when I was doing my remodeling of my home, that's who I would talk to if they wouldn't show up. So I mean, if that's what it takes, I didn't realize that they weren't showing up until this morning when my mom shows me, and I said, what do you mean nobody has been showing up?
Mr. Kendall?
I don't live on
Yes,
the
sir.
property.
You made a statement that you first were aware of this property through code compliance in 91.
1991, we had violations on this site. At that time, we did deal with the railroad carve-out building permits. We finally had received building permits for it, but they were never completed. We had automobiles. Mr. Valdez was a labor contractor, so we had him conducting a business which has ceased since that time. But we had many automobiles, and we had a lot of solid waste, and it stayed on the property.
That has been dissolved.
Today, the majority of the problems are just, as Mr. Chairman pointed out, is the lack of building permits as per their obligation in the code compliance agreement. And as of last inspection, we still had one automobile that was inoperative. And as you know, my division is the one that deals with inoperative vehicles. And we had a minor amount of solid waste.
I need to make a disclosure here this morning because I didn't realize until the folks came up that I am acquainted with the person. She is a coworker of my wife at Munson Sultana School. We have had, obviously, therefore, no communication about this. I have not had any conversation with this person or her children. I have driven by this property, but I don't recall anything about it. So I just wanted to make that disclosure as we proceed this morning. Is there any other questions or comments by board members?
Well, Mr. Comments in general, or?
Yes.
I have no questions for anybody. I think what happens, at least for this board member, is that it's an 8-year process, and it's just amazing to me that it gets down to the last minute, and then all of a sudden something's going to be done, or there's some promise of something to be done. And the most frustrating part is, for me, is that the work is not being done, and then I think it sets our board up to look like we are uncaring and that we don't care for people that are making a good faith effort, even though it's taken 8 years. And it also sets a precedent that I see increasingly more of this, Mr. Chairman, coming before our board, of folks, you know, just saying, I can't get to it, or I'm busy, or I need 18 years, I need 20 years to clean my property. And, you know, I had a recent conversation with some folks that are very concerned that we continue to waive fees and allow people that are put into this process to not have a more diligent, good faith effort in cleaning up their property. And every time we're asked to, as I say, cut down the fee or disallow the fee, then each time it becomes increasingly more difficult to try to work with folks who push us to the very limit of the law. It's very, very frustrating for me.
I think one of the questions are that there was a concern about not only the amount but also the payment terms. And as I recall, this becomes a lien on the property. There's actually a 5-year period, if I'm not mistaken, Council, is that correct? Before there would be enforcement action. In other words, it would be like a tax sale. So
this is only a lien against the property. It's not against the tax rolls.
oh, so there is no. So
And the lien was placed on this property the 1 week period after the signing of the agreement. So the way the board has set up the code compliance agreements, there is an interest that is due, 10%, but it is not put on the tax roll. It does not go to sale.
That is actually part of your legislative platform, I believe, to make that change. But in the meantime, if the property is sold, of course, the amount is recovered through escrow, or your board can instruct us at any time to bring legal action to enforce the lien, which would require separate legal.
And that's to assure the folks that they're not going to have their property sold out from underneath them. It becomes a lien on the property, so at such time as they were to sell the property, or if there's an estate issue, at that time it would be a collectible amount, unless the county were to actually bring a lawsuit to try to recover the funds. Is that, if I said it correctly, Council? So that is the situation as far as how the money is collected, if you will.
I have a question of council, if I may. As I look at the original agreement, the actual fine is reduced from $9,000 to $7,000 if they sign the code compliance agreement. My question is, since they've failed to complete that, can we raise the fine back up to $9,000?
No, sir.
Thank you. That's all I need to know.
So the maximum amount is $7,000.
I have a question.
Yes.
Those $7,000 are on either, even if we cleaned or we didn't clean?
Well, as I understand the agreement, your obligation was to clean the property, and if you did so, you would still be subject to the $7,000?
No,
just at the $800.
The board has directed that fees be charged for the cost of investigation and enforcement, no matter what, but the fines would have been all waived if the compliance agreement had been abated as per the agreement.
But you would have paid only the $800 or $900, whatever the amount was, administrative cost, and you would not have had to pay the $7,000. But since it was not done in the time that was agreed to by the agreement, and let me tell you, I mean, if there's a problem, people come to Mr. Kendall and say, because of weather or whatever, we can't meet these timelines, we need some additional time, and we have given time. The problem here is that there was no communication. You simply, the time expired the things had not been completed, and now you're saying that the problem was the weather, but that was not presented until after the fact. It appears it's a situation of delay creating your problem in that you didn't communicate back with the county. You had an agreement, then you didn't comply with the terms and conditions of the agreement.
Yeah, but we went, and one of the times he wasn't there, and then the second time we went, it was closer to the deadline in April. And so then he says, well, you need to get a letter to me in order to meet with me and meet upon the board again, or with the officer. And I said, okay, so that took some time. So it's like we missed the deadline, but we thought we were going to be done cleaning, but it was just a lot of stuff. And so we didn't meet the deadline because of the weather and because of the amount of stuff that they wanted cleaned up off the property. So, I mean, even though we went to the hearings and they opposed it or whatever, we've kept cleaning and cleaning and cleaning. It's an ongoing process. They gave us 160 days, but those 160 days was not enough for the amount of stuff that was on the property. And the weather and everything else that, you know. And mainly my parents were doing it on their own because I have a set of twins. She's disabled, and it's like, it's just a disaster between all of us, you know. And, I mean, that's not like your problem or our problem or whatever, but it's become a big problem.
Board, anything else before I close the public comment period? Any other further comments?
No, I mean, we're going to try, we're going to maintain the property clean. It's not like it's going to go back to where it was. My parents' health is not getting any better, and it cannot go back to where all the...
Mr. Chairman, could I ask for interpretation? You're indicating keeping the property clean, but as related by you, there's other issues such as the building permits.
Well, right, we will start, I mean, finish this up. We have to, there's no...
Let me ask you, on the one that was never picked up and is therefore expired,
We
was
had
that...
no knowledge of it.
Well, I don't know, but I'm leaving that aside. Was it a building permit to bring it into compliance, or was it a demolition permit? What was...
It was to bring it up to compliance, which without the permit, we still, you know, painted it and fixed it and you know, took whatever was bad in it and has made it up to compliance, but we just never got the permit to get the final on it.
Mr. Chair.
The permits that it has is like from 1970 something.
All right.
But it was never final.
Mr. Chair, you know, most of you know I'm a contractor, and it's my responsibility to pick up my permit. It's not the buildings department responsibility to get the permit to me. So in that having been said, it's your responsibility to get the permit. It's not Mr. Kendall's responsibility. It's not the RMA's responsibility to find you to get you the building permit. It's your responsibility.
We did go 2 or 3 times to go pick it up, and they said it wasn't ready.
And then
So
it's still your responsibility.
Right.
It's my responsibility as a contractor. It's your responsibility as a homeowner, so that you didn't pick up the permit after 6 months. You know, that's irresponsible as far as I'm concerned.
All right. If there's nothing else, I'm going to close the public comment period to bring it back to the board for discussion and/or action.
Mr. Chair, I would make the motion to deny the waiver of the $300 filing fee, deny the appeal, and uphold the administrative hearing officers on violation B 498001.
Second.
Further discussion? My only comment here is that there's no question about the breach of the contract. I only question the ability of these folks to pay this amount of money, and it would have been, of course, further incentive for them to get the project completed, but I do know that we're dealing with senior people on fixed incomes, and I think this creates a hardship for them, but I understand that we have to move forward, and we have these kinds of situations throughout the county, and we're making an effort to try to keep things cleaned up and fixed up, and these things happen. So,
Chairman, I think, too, that we have a responsibility to the department. We set the policy, and we ask them to carry it out. And then when they carry it out, and this has been going on for 8 years, plus if you go back to the very first time, back, 2001 or whatever it was, it really creates a problem for us to set policy about cleaning up the county. And then we have something like this occur. I really feel bad. I'm going to vote for the motion. I really feel bad because I understand the concept. My parents lived in a tent for many years up and down the valley. Sometimes we don't understand what the process is. In this day and age where we have the ability to communicate, and young lady, you're a very talented young lady, And this is really, may not be fair to you, but this is the way the system has to work for us to be able to enforce it. We have places all over the county that if we don't enforce it, it doesn't do us any good to give direction to our staff. And I think Supervisor's right. The individual has a responsibility once the process starts. For $7,000, I'd have been at his house on Sunday morning every morning, and I would have been there. And I've been in your spot before as well. And Supervisor's right, your responsibility, and I go back to 1998 up until now, it's been 8 years trying to get this solved. And I would have hoped that you would have come to us before if you couldn't get an answer out of it. But I really feel bad about this, but I'm going to vote for the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I want to say one more time, I just feel bad every time this happens. I don't know if there's a way to fix it, to encourage people to not wait 10 years. I don't know.
I understand the emotion, and I suspect I can count on my hand how the vote's going to be. My only concern is that we are going to impose a fee upon these folks that I don't know if they have the ability to pay, and then on top of that, we still have got a problem that's not been resolved. So we still have a situation where permits need to be done, performed, and essentially we've come this far and we haven't really fixed the problem, and other than to go through this process again. So I would have liked to have seen us think about perhaps some system of reward as well as punishment, not letting people off the hook completely, but at the same time giving them some incentive to get this completed and some forgiveness of some of this fine, because this is just fine. This is just punishment. This is not our cost. This is strictly punishment.
Yeah,
and we could have punished them for something. Mr. Cox, I understand. We could have punished them for something less than $7,000 and said, if you get this done in the next 60 days or whatever, then you will be forgiven that portion of the punishment. But we have not done that, and I understand why we've not done that, or why the board has made the motion, and why it will probably go forward. But at the same time, we still haven't solved the problem, and so in that regard, I feel like we could have done perhaps a little bit better job.
We haven't voted yet, Mr. Chairman. There's an opportunity for the motion to be amended.
Yeah. If I can make a quick comment, you're right, it's not over. And there are things that need to be done still. We have built in a way where the entire fine could have gone away, and they did not avail themselves of that process. So that is built in. The next process, I'm sure Mr. Kendall is looking at, is if the permits aren't picked up, and the process stops here and there's no additional effort made, then Ms. Kathleen Bells-Lang, our county counsel, is going to be involved, and the next steps will be taken. So there is some incentive there, although be it a negative incentive, there is an incentive there to complete the work that needs to be done. So I agree with you and I sympathize, but you know, we've drawn a line in the sand, and we need to stop erasing that line and moving it.
I appreciate your comments. I would say that this is not a situation where the evidence that presented today to us is one of being totally stonewalled. In other words, I believe there was an effort made on the part of the party here to try to come into compliance. Granted, late. Granted, not completed. Granted, still a violation of the contract. But there was an effort made to try to do something. Effort has been made. There's a continued effort to being made. And I would like to see, again, we're talking about punishment. We're talking about people with very limited income. And my thought would have been to keep the $7,000 penalty there, give them 60 days to come to compliance. And if they do that, meaning all the violations are completed, that they would be subject to a $3,000 fine or $4,000 fine. And in that way, we still have made our point. We're still punishing them for their failure, but we're giving them some incentive to get this thing completed and done. And I think that there appears to be a willingness on their part to want to do something of that nature.
Care to amend your motion, Supervisor?
Can I comment before the motion?
Public hearing's closed.
Oh, the public hearing is closed, sir. Sorry.
I don't care to amend the motion. We can vote, and then if someone else wants to amend it, we'll vote again.
All right. Please cast your votes. My light's not lighting up because I never hit no. That's why. There it is. That's a no on mine. For some reason, it's not.
It's trying to.
Record reflect that the vote is 3 yeses and 2 noes. For one reason, mine's not showing up. No, it's not working.
Chairman, I would move to amend the motion.
Oh, Mr. Maples, the motion was passed. You voted for the motion by Mr. Cox.
Yes, that's true.
So it's 3-2.
Robert's Rules of Order doesn't allow amendment after the vote.
The motion is passed.
And the motion is
Supervisor
passed.
By 3-2. So your board has made a decision regarding.
I withdraw my comment.
The matter's concluded then that your appeal's been denied. So but again, you still have the violations that you need to deal with, and so I would encourage you to do that.
You know, I still find it interesting, Mr. Chairman, that we set the policy, and the chairman at the time said we need to clean up the county, and we need to review, in my opinion, we need to review the direction that we give to staff if we continue to give a 3-2 vote on an item of this one. I would have offered to split the baby earlier, but that would have been totally against the concept that we have. And so we have the responsibility of setting the policy, and then when the policy is brought before us to be tested, then we get a 3-2 vote on it. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me wonder.
Brings to item number 6, which is another public hearing. It's a request from the Resource Management Agency to receive public comment on obtaining a Federal Transit Act Section 5311 grant funding from the California Department of Transportation for purchase of a new compressed natural gas transit bus and a drive cam video security system for the county bus fleet. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members. Dan Fox, RMA Transit Coordinator. First, I must mention that the agenda item number 6 has been revised, and ask the clerk to hand out the revised agenda item. I have one.
Mr. Chair, I think we have the revised.
I think we had two. We've got 2 number 6s, so I'm assuming one is the revision.
We do have the revised.
The one that's revised. And we're here today to hold a public hearing to request from the RMA to receive public comment on obtaining federal funding from the FTA 5311 bus program. Yes, yeah, this is the one. And the items that we're going to be requesting is a compressed natural gas transit bus to replace an old gas-powered bus, a drive cam video security system for the county bus fleet, and operating funds for general expenses to be reimbursed to the county.
All right. Are there any questions or comments from board members? If not,
one quick question: has the Measure R funding been taken into consideration as we look at the operating assistance side of this?
This application was done, and it was part of the POP before Measure R was passed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. It's a public hearing, and open the public hearing at this time. Anyone wishing to address this matter, item number 6, is invited to come forward and give us your name and address. Seeing and hearing no one, we will close the public comment period and bring it back to the board for action.
And staff is requesting that the board authorize the submittal of 3 separate grant applications to the California Department of Transportation for the purchase of the CNG bus and the drive cam video system and the matching operating funds.
Chair, would motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Second. Please cast your vote. Vote unanimous in support. And that will bring us into item number 7. I think we will take a 5-minute recess and then come back before we start this hearing.
terrible.
It's not inconsistent for us to support of it, to make it so. That's not inconsistent.
My whole east side of Fort I would have looked at it, but I didn't see the
Please find a seat. Board is back in session. There has been a request for interpreting simultaneously, my comments being interpreted, and any of the speakers. I would request that if there is a need for Spanish interpreting, that the group that needs that interpreting services would get towards somewhere in the back. And I'm only saying the back because if you're in the front, it is a very difficult thing to be heard because of the way the acoustics are in this building.
Va a haber servicios de intérpretes para aquellos que necesitan los servicios. Lo que necesitan es que se junten en un grupo para que así sea más fácil. Estaban pidiendo que solamente para que estén juntos, tal vez hacia atrás o donde se puedan juntar todos ustedes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I understand, other than Montserrat from the COS, who's been trying to interpret all of the proceedings that have been going on in the back, and there's an acoustical problem. She has suggested if we have the people who need translation services sit in 2 rows, the other, I'm sorry, I don't know your last name, Daniela, could provide interpretation for one of the rows and Montserrat for the other row and keep the volume down, but at least they would be able to hear.
That's fine. Where do they want to do that?
Most of us are sitting here already, so that's why I've been interpreting the whole meeting. I don't think
No, it was not a problem at all. Thank you. Okay.
She's outside of the circle.
Yeah, you're outside the circle. That's yes, we will be cognizant of your need and try to slow
Okay.
down.
Quédense donde están. Ahorita los intérpretes van a ir hacia atrás y vamos a acomodarnos en 2 hileras.
A couple of items to mention before we begin this item. This is not a public hearing. The public hearing has been closed. Under the Brown Act, anyone wishing to speak to the board on an item which comes before the board, time is allowed for that. Our rules allow us to limit that to a total of no more than 15 minutes, and that is my intent. Obviously, that does not apply to the project proponent or the project or the person, the appellant, but as to public comments, those will be limited to a total of 15 minutes, 3 minutes per person. In the event that interpretation is required, we will double the time because that would be needed for interpreting the English language into the Spanish language and back and forth. So with that in mind, I would this time request our staff report. This is, again, consideration of a special use permit, and it has to do with a report back because of items that have been presented to the board at the last hearing.
Thank you, Mr.
Oh, excuse me.
If I could just make a brief correction, and I apologize, it's just lawyers' semantics.
Be sure to speak in your microphone. We're not hearing you very well.
If I could make a brief correction to your comments, and it's just lawyers' semantics. The public hearing is still open. Public comment regarding the EIR has been closed.
All right. Thank you for that correction. And what that means is that whatever people say today will be part of the record, but for the purpose of the evidentiary information upon which the board will render a decision, those comments will not be considered. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, I'm Beverly Cates, the Project Review Division Manager at Resource Management Agency. At your December 5th meeting, staff was directed to prepare responses to comments. A pamphlet has been prepared. It includes a transcript of the meeting of December 5th. It includes the submittals from the public, and then it concludes with responses to testimony and comments. At this time, I'd like to ask Quad Knopf, the preparers of this document, to make their conclusions for our staff.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Roger Richards. I'm an employee with Quad Knopf, and we prepared the response to the comments and the information that was submitted to you at your last meeting. We believe that the responses to the comments and the comments that were provided, both written and oral, did not provide any additional information that would limit you from making a decision.
Are there any questions from board members?
Mr. Chair, I want
yes.
to be clear then, the information that was given to us and the responses does not require the EIR to be recirculated.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments by board members? All right, at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. At this time, are there any statements by the project applicant? Morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. David Albers, attorney for Sam Etchegary. I urge you to vote today. The only other comment I wanted to make is that we have had ongoing discussions with the State Parks Department about a possible proposal for some dairy development rights to be purchased and sold at some point in the future. Just wanted to let you know that Mr. Etchegary is still very open to that in concept and will proceed down that road and negotiate in good faith. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Albers. Does the appellate wish to speak to this matter? All right, then at this time, we will allow the, again, the appellant. You know, I apologize. I misspoke. There are no appellants because this matter was not brought to the board on appeal. It was brought to the board because of the failure of a decision by the Planning Commission to make a decision, so there are no appeals. Therefore, the 15-minute rule does apply, ma'am. So I will give you 3 minutes to make your comments, and we will allow the opponents to speak for a total of 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello and good morning. My name is Ivy Arlinda Goolsby, and I'm a resident of Long Beach, California. I am also a taxpayer of Tulare County. I own property here in Visalia, located at 116 West Tulare Avenue. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today in regards to Allensworth. Today I am here on behalf of myself, my family, and my ancestors, and as well as I am a taxpayer of Tulare County. I urge you today to deny the request for a special permit to operate a dairy facility across from Allensworth State Historic Park. If you grant this permit, it will have a great negative impact on Allensworth and its families that still remain there. We are talking about tons of manure being produced, as well as flies, and of course, the terrible, terrible smell. If you grant this permit to the dairies today, what can we expect tomorrow for Allensworth? We need to preserve our African American heritage as well as American heritage. This is not a black or white issue. This is an American issue. Had it not been for certain events that took place in our American history, Allensworth would have not been created. I'm pretty sure all of you know and should know that Allensworth was created to provide African Americans an opportunity to develop a town that was free of discrimination. Its emphasis was development of a community that was governed, financed, and operated by African Americans. Allensworth is a precious piece of the American and African American history, heritage, and culture. I'm asking you, please, keep Allensworth intact and in our history books. I honestly believe if you grant this permit that one day we will look up and we all would say, what happened to Allensworth? It will eventually, over time, disappear if you let this happen. Let's preserve the legacy of Allensworth, and I want to thank you once again for giving me the opportunity, and I ask for your consideration, and may God bless America and Allensworth. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chair, members of the Board of Supervisors. My name is Catherine Tobias. I'm an attorney with the Department of Parks and Recreation in Sacramento. My address is 1416 9th Street. I just wanted to be here this morning to let you know that Parks has been talking. We have talked with the applicant several times about the purchase of what we're calling, for lack of a better term, the dairy development rights, although that would probably include any kind of livestock related facilities in that area on that property. We are working with the Trust for Public Land, a nonprofit who would help facilitate the negotiations and the purchase on an expedited basis. And they have suggested a postponement to January 9th in order to meet with the applicant. They have suggested that they could be here as early as Friday, or they could be here next week. But they wanted to try to work with the applicant on the, at least the concept of the development rights and how that would occur. So that would be Parks' first choice, as a postponement. We do stand prepared to continue to negotiate with the applicant on that while we're still in the process of the final granting of the permit.
Thank you.
Any questions?
No. Any questions, members?
Mr. Chairman, board members, my name is Joseph Debro. I live at 3130 Hood Street in Oakland, California. I'm a biochemical engineer, and I wanted to express some concerns about the mitigation monitoring plan, because as I glanced over the plan, there are lots of mitigating circumstances with which a monitor has to be concerned. And I was told by one of your staff members that you have one monitor for 300 dairies. So my concern is how does one person monitor numerous possible violations in 300 different dairies? That seems to me an impossibility. The other issue is sanctions. There appears to be no sanctions that are practical to be levied against these mitigating circumstances. And I'd just like to put that in the record. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Morning.
Morning.
My name is Francisco Castillo Medina, and I am a resident of Allensworth. I read something about the people, that is, people who live in the community of Allensworth, that a lot of them are in favor of this project. You know, on the internet, and some papers have published that. I've been there 40 years. And here lately, we have had numerous meetings at our town council, and I have yet to see any discussion for this project. On a couple of occasions, our supervisor has been in attendance, and if she can remember an argument over in favor of this, maybe she can remind me. You also have a recorded everything that's been said here and who said it. How many Allensworth addresses, how many people who live in Allensworth can you come up with that said, I'm in favor of it? And as we speak, everybody that is standing behind me is against it. So this is a distortion to say that we in Allensworth favor this. In fact, you have heard from us time and time again. And we urge you again. I'm not from out of town. I am from Allensworth. I am a registered voter. And it is our vote which placed you in the responsibility that you now carry. Do it well.
Right.
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Kelly Nellam, and I come to you on behalf of the state NAACP. And I won't belabor you with comments that you've heard from previous meetings and some of the comments that you've heard echoed this morning. But what I will say to you is, with no disrespect to the applicant, I understand that you all have a job to do, and I trust that you will do it well. But I would like to make you aware and just let you know from a state perspective, from a local perspective, as a member of the Friends of Allensworth, that this is a critical component of African American history. It is something that no father can leave a legacy bigger than the legacy that now exists. The problem with this is that we have to open our eyes and our hearts and understand that this is something that far exceeds monetary value. This is an ethical issue. This is something that we need as a culture, that our children need, and people come from all over the United States to visit this park. There are events at various times of the year that we all frequent. There is things that are not in the history books that is, and that history memorabilia is discovered at that park when we take our children from the colleges, the elementary schools, and from wherever they come from. They travel far. That history is told by the ancestors and the residents and the folks that live in this town. And that's something that you all will not be able to write a check big enough to take care of or diminish. And I ask that you keep that in your conscience as you see this audience standing before you, and as you hear the state NAACP, the state legislators that have communicated with me up to this point, and understand that we adamantly oppose, and trust that you will understand and respect that we oppose your decision to let this project go forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could you point out that both microphones are live?
Yes, that's right. You may use the microphone.
Good morning. My name is Michelle Maida, and I'm a staff attorney with the Natural Resources Defense Council. And the NRDC has a history of working on dairy issues. And we've seen that even with mitigation measures, dairies, especially one of this size, have significant unavoidable impacts on the environment that the EIR did not sufficiently address. I'm just going to go through a few little ones, but it dismisses the use of synthetic lagoon liners, which we have seen is pretty much the only way to offer the best amount of protection against groundwater contamination. The EIR instead advocates clay, which seeps. There's already contaminated groundwater underneath the site, relatively shallow underneath the site, and yet the EIR did not include the synthetic lagoon liners as a feasible mitigation measure. The EAR also underestimates the amount of NOx emissions. They use the incorrect factor of calculating animal units on the farm. And also, there's a recent study showing that dairies specifically of this kind, freestall flush dairies, have the most potential out of any of the kind of dairies for increases in nitrogen emissions. The EAR does not at all address salt loading of soils, which is a very significant issue. And the EIR, it acknowledges that only a 50% reduction of flies is going to occur with mitigation measures, but with a dairy of this size, even a 50% reduction will amount to significant off-site migration of flies. This is only a small sample of the deficiencies in the EIR with respect to the dairy, and with that, we urge you to not adopt these permits because those issues cannot be ignored. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Chairman, the board. My name is Victor Carter. I'm the president of Friends of Allensworth. I addressed you at the last hearing, but I was back here today to present another 74 names from the LA area that stand with us to ask for a no vote or a delay in the decision making. These names were collected over a one-day period since the last hearing. I don't know if you want a copy or...
You may give that to our clerk, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Carolina Simunovic. I work with Fresno Metro Ministry, and I am co-chair of the Central Valley Air Quality Coalition. I stand before you today to register our strong opposition to the approval of this permit. The decision, if approved, would have significant impacts on the air quality of the entire region. That's why there is attention focused here today from all parts of the state as well as all parts of the San Joaquin Valley. I think no matter what amount of mitigation you might try to include, even if you gave new air conditioners and screens for all of the residents that live nearby, there will be a significant change in their quality of life that is too precious and too priceless to put a amount on. The Central Valley Air Quality Coalition is a coalition of over 150 individuals and 60 members, all concerned about the air quality of this region, about children coming down with asthma, about people leaving the region, smart people that we want to keep here because they can't stand living in a polluted area. And it's these decisions at a very local level that impact the entire region. I think that you've heard enough testimony in the 3 sessions that you've had and received enough written comments to give you the sufficient amount of evidence to disapprove this permit. Just because an individual or a company goes through the processes and makes it up to this level of decision making doesn't mean you have to rubber stamp an approval. We are talking about all these issues in the blueprint process. We're talking about all these issues in the San Joaquin Valley Partnership. Good decisions need to be made by our local elected officials to protect the quality of life of this region. I hope that we can count on your support for that. Thank you.
Good morning, honorable members of the Board of Supervisors, county staff, and assembled citizens. My name is Peter Joseph Rosenwald, and I traveled up to Visalia today from Long Beach. I want to be sure that an email that I sent to Honorable Chairman Steve Worthley was part of the record. Board Representative Jeff Forbes told me that I would be able to see this in the record, and I haven't seen it, so I'd like to read this into the record. Dear Honorable Chairman Worthley, I'm asking that you vote to deny the special use permits being requested to allow dairy operations adjacent to Allensworth in Allensworth State Park. Allensworth is a unique asset in the history of California and Tulare County. Allowing a dairy to operate as contemplated is a serious mistake. Please deny the special use permit requests at your board meeting on December 19th, 2006. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, Peter Joseph Rosenwald. Also, I would like to have put in the record some materials that I obtained from the Tulare County Library. And there's 23 pages from just a vertical file of information about Allensworth and Teviston. This is important because a lot has been written on it, and it is part of the legacy and history of this county and the state and the nation. Thank you very much.
This will be our last speaker. The 15 minutes will be expired.
My name is Richard Buddy Jones. I live at 207 Oakhurst Street. I'm local. I'm from Visalia. I had a construction business. I'm also a contractor. It's called Buddy's Contracting Service. Went bankrupt. Prior to my bankruptcy, we did over $13 million in projects in the Sequoia National Park. And my grandkids go through that park now and then. They say, my grandpa did that. My grandpa did that. That's critical to me. I gave a talk to a bunch of young kids. And afterwards, a young black kid came to me and said, did you really do $1 million worth of work? And I said, yes. And my friend pulled me over and said, you lied to that kid. I said, why? He said, you did millions. I said, no, that's what he understood. That's possible for him. He thought one day he can do that. I didn't want to put a dream that he couldn't accomplish out in front of him. Allensworth is what we have. That's all we have in terms of what some of the founders of this valley, put together. And I appeal to your heart to leave this legacy so that not only my grandkids, but your grandkids can say, there's a little community we're proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. This matter is set on closed session, and we would request an opportunity to visit with our counsel on this matter. We will return shortly. We have a seat.
Found out that when I switched over from this. Yeah, but I'm not sure. Wireless is not supposed to have a
No, ya la cambié, porque tengo corte. Ya.
Hey, Hal?
No, no, ya.
Hal? Hal?
I just found the pictures you'd sent me from the other day. I found them on my desk. I was so happy. From Porterville. I was like, oh.
What a nice guy.
Totally.
Shock.
He's one to the last month. Wait, are you talking about the first floor or the second floor? Thanks, I'll pass on that. The third floor is where he lives, isn't it? I'll pass on that, thanks. Is it? Well, no, do they have crawfish there? Hence the name of the product. No, because I've never had crawfish. We have to break the head off right when you suck it. I've never done that. I'm Mexican. I've never done it, and I want to once. Let me just break the head, snap the head off. Snap the head off. It's like shrimp, you know? Just head off the shrimp.
Check. 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 Can you hear me? Still very. Can you see the level on the tape player, though? Can you see the level on the tape player? If it's picking up my voice? Pretty good. Check, 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 check. Lean forward like this.
It's been a mess
as long as my DMV and credit and all that stuff was really good. They do the credit check. Yeah, they do a credit check. So once all that goes through. Yeah. As long as it's okay, good job. Well, I'm going through some frustrations this morning as well, so I'll go through that. Do you? Didn't they get you two of those? The Mark II ones? It still works, right? As long as it shoots through the screen. It's brand new, right? Not a scratch on it. That's the innovator right there. The very beginning. Still, it's a testament to how good it's so live. It's so live. I'm going to say you guys are here until the end, though, right? We're out here for the end. Mind if I see your phone? Of course, they've kept the same lifestyle the whole time. Yeah. I was wondering that. What do they do? I know. Yeah. Nikon made a left-handed F100. There you go. Well, it's probably been that design for a reason, right? Yes, since 1940. There's probably something newer that'll come along someday that works. It's like those video games, they're all the same. Oh, wait. I know it's the same with the video, but yeah. Just 'cause they feel like it. They don't need to, but it's
Got to stick around for relatively short presentations. Huh?
What's the matter? You said this is yeah, 44. Oh, it's Julia?
She doesn't know if it's being pulled, but the problem is, I'm not sure.
I have my original John Tipton composition in my head right now. Jim?
Oh.
Board's back in open session after consultation with our legal counsel. This time the matter is before the board for discussion and/or action. Are there comments from board members that they'd like to make at this time?
Mr. Chairman, I have a comment. I had a chance this morning to review a fax that was sent to Supervisor Conway from the California State Parks Foundation, and in its last paragraph, it made a statement. This proposal by the Department of Parks and Recreation has the opportunity to forge a compromise. The talks must be allowed to continue without one party being disadvantaged in its negotiations. To me, after 20 years in the real estate business, this means that when you evaluate a piece of property, when you go to buy it, a lot of times the value is determined upon its entitlements. And sometimes you'll have a real disadvantage coming to a compromise when you can't settle on what the value of the property is. Is it strict farmland, or is it is it entitled to be a dairy? So I think that's an important part of my decision making.
Mr. Maples?
I just want to express a personal opinion. These are never easy. We have a stack of documents that professional people have dealt with over a period of time. And then we have folks such as yourself that is willing to give your time and effort to be here to give testimony today. I have a strong feeling of sentiment whenever I see you there. As a professor at a community college for some 36 years, I have had the privilege of having several young men from the Oakland area attend college as a student athlete. I remember the awe that was in their eyes when I first took them to a dairy and they watched the birth of a calf, or they watched the milking process, or I took them to an orchard where they could pick fruit from the trees, such as oranges, apples, and peaches, and etc. We are the #1 dairy industry in the nation. We are the #2 agricultural county in the nation. But I go back even a little further with some of you folks, because I see some of the grandmothers out there that probably relate to okra and to black-eyed peas and those things. You see, I relate to you as an Okie, and I take great pride in saying to you today that I'm from Oklahoma, but I also remember the time that my father, when I was 5 years of age, couldn't find work, and we traveled to California to pick cotton and chop cotton and pick peaches in the north, and we've driven up and down 99 Highway, not far from Allensworth, many, many times, and we lived in a tent. I went to 6 elementary schools in 1 year. The point I want to make to you is I was last night reading the material and contemplating the decision that had to be made. My wife pointed out to me that I had a book that she had read, Children of the Dust Bowl, and this is the story of the history of Weed Patch Camp, which is down in the Bakersfield area, and I was raised in Pumpkin Center, about 10 miles from there. And the Children of the Dust Bowl was a school that was put in because the school district in Kern County didn't want us Okies. As one teacher said to me, she said, "Are you like the rest of the Okies that don't read and write?" And they were burning books and things. Farmers didn't want us there. But anyway, I relate to your effort in being here today, and I relate to the concern you have. And I hope that you understand, I pray that you understand the decision that we have to make today, that it still has options that are open to you. This camp was put in, the kids was taught carpentry, they were taught, they had a dairy, they were taught, and they built their own classrooms, and they built their own swimming pool. And many of those people became the strength of the Kern Community College area that I was part of. So I say to you today, thank you for being here. You've been very professional. You've been very courteous in the remarks that you made to us. I'll tell you this, I was a little offended last time when the little kids got up. If I would have made remarks to my elders such as that, my bottom would have been black and white, because my dad wouldn't let me at that age make those kind of remarks to a group such as this, because we take great pride in the decisions that we're elected to do. So I finish my rambling with saying this to you. You've come a long way. Thank you for being here. And the decision we make today still has a great deal of options, I think, for you. So thank you again on that, on my behalf.
Ms. Conway?
Mr. Chairman, Much has been said, much testimony has been given, much emotional testimony and thought into the words and remarks that all of these people have come before this board more than once, more than twice. I think this is 3. Today, remarks were made to make Allensworth, or to leave Allensworth, a community we can be proud of. We are proud of Allensworth. We are proud of the legacy. We are proud of the history. Somehow, and I am saddened by the fact that somehow the perception is there that agriculture and dairying is disrespectful to people's culture and heritage. I don't know that it would do me any good to say that my own personal experience has been different. I'm not from a dairy family. I did not own a dairy, but I lived a half a block for 13 years from a dairy, a large dairy. A half a block. My home was not covered with manure. My home was not inundated by flies. That's my personal reality. But I have listened to and considered the personal reality of each and every person that stood here before us. Somehow this became us against them, and I'm saddened by that. I'm saddened that a land use decision, and I really believe it's been confiscated. The issue has been confiscated by a group of environmental lawyers from the Bay Area whose only mission is to stop dairy production in this county. Stop dairy production in this county.
Folks, if you are not going to be silent while comments are being made up here, I'm going to clear the room. Now, you've been very respectful, and I appreciate that, but now is our opportunity to speak. We've allowed you all to speak. This is the 3rd meeting we've had, and this is the opportunity. The board has been silent until now. This is the board's opportunity to speak. I would ask you to listen to the board. We've tried to understand your position. It's an opportunity for you to understand our position. Now, please.
Mr. Chairman, as I said, it probably does me no good to continue, but I still believe that that is part of the issue here. I have respect for the community. I am proud of the community. I am struggling to figure out how 1¼ miles away, dairies lined with trees, and additional orchard put in that will not be able to be viewed from the park, how we got to a point where it becomes Tulare County against a cultural heritage over a land use decision. I am saddened by this, and in some respects, once again, I am struggling to understand how agriculture, the dairy industry, farming in general is disrespectful, and how our opinions are swayed purely by emotion. That's it.
Briefly, I agree with what the rest of the board members have said, and I do appreciate those that have come and testified. I must say it's been a pleasure to listen to your comments and to your feelings. I especially am concerned and interested in the comments from those that actually live in the Allensworth community, those that are that feel that they'll be affected by this project. I'm at a loss of words. We've listened to those that have lived in the community, all the way to those that are no dairy, anytime, anywhere folks. And having read through, and believe it or not, we read through this stuff, having read through thousands of pages of information and documentation by by people that are experts in their field, it's difficult not to read this information and to not grant the owner the rights to his property that I feel that he has. So it'll be my intention today to vote to approve the applicant's application.
Well, I guess that leaves myself. I just want to say that I very much appreciate the effort that was made by many people to come. Some of you have been here, I know, 3 different times. You may have appeared at the previous hearings before it became to the board. You have been respectful. I appreciate your respectfulness. We have respected your opinions. I was speaking to a reporter after the last meeting, and I made some comment about facts, and one of the ladies outside said, "You're just all about facts, aren't you?" Well, yes, I am about facts. I'm an attorney by profession, but facts are what have to drive good decision-making. If we make our decisions based upon emotion, we can go almost any direction. But it's facts that really determine whether or not something is a problem. For instance, I am convinced that many of you are very sincere in your fears about what this dairy will do to the community of Allensworth. And when I say that, your fears are based upon air quality, water quality, flies, and those sorts of things. But when we have reviewed the facts, when we have reviewed the evidence that has been presented to us in this EIR, it has not been contested, then I find no basis for the fear. I'm reminded of the famous quotation of Franklin Delano Roosevelt when he said, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself." If we are only fearful because we're fearful, but we don't have a basis for that fear, that does not make for good decision-making. Our decision-making has to be based upon the facts and the information that's been presented to us. And so I appreciate where you're coming from. I understand your concerns. But I have to base my decision on the information that's been presented to me. And the information says that the problems that you all are concerned about is misguided. I live within a mile of a dairy today, where I live today. I grew up on a dairy, and dairies are dynamic. They have changed, because the dairy my father had 16 cows. And the dairy that is a mile from me, when I grew up, was 200 cows, and now it's about 500 cows. And I remember when the dairies came in, and we thought they were mega dairies, that's 600 cows. And now they're thousands of cows. But let me tell you what's happened because of that. The dairies are cleaner. There are less impacts because now there is the resources to pay for the kinds of things which will ameliorate the otherwise big problems that occur from not having the resources to do that. In other words, it takes money to make for a clean dairy. And I wish we had the time to take each of you on a tour of a state-of-the-art type of dairy in Tulare County, because I think you would be amazed to see how they operate. I have done so. Consequently, I think you probably can count. But I will at this time entertain a motion. And I would also like to point out that this is only a process. We are here today for the purpose of approving a permit based upon a certification of an EIR. We are not the end of the process. There are still more hoops for the applicant to go through. And these include going before the Air Pollution Control District, and I've asked our staff to actually get up and recite some of these for you, because I think it's very significant that you know about what steps occur from now. At this time, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I do have a question for the clerk of the board. What's the closest board meeting we have 90 days from today? March 20th. Mr. Chair, I would make a motion then to tentatively certify the CEQA documents and approve the special use permit pursuant to the conditions recommended by our staff, and to direct staff to bring back findings and a final resolution of decision on March 20th.
The motion is for a tentative decision, bringing it back for findings before the board, which would be the final decision-making process on March 20th.
Second.
We have a second to the motion. Is there any further discussion among board members? No, let's cast our votes then. Vote is unanimous. At this time, I would like, before you all depart, I've asked our staff to talk somewhat about what I just mentioned a moment ago, about the process from this point. The board has not made a final decision. That will not be made until March 20th. That allows, as some of you are aware, there have been discussions between the governor's office, the Parks Department, about negotiations with the property owner over purchase of development rights on his property, that would be dairy development rights. That will allow that process to begin and to continue. And there are, beyond that, Mr. Finney, there are other issues that have to be resolved before any type of construction would occur on a project.
Again, George Finney, Resource Management Agency. Again, as the Chair has noted, the conditions of approval and mitigation measures that are laid out in the documents before you contain an involved process that involves further approvals by other agencies. And mainly the two regional agencies, the Regional Water Quality Control Board and the Regional Air Pollution Control District. Depending on how quickly the applicant wishes to move, this could take from anywhere from 8 to 12 months before those permits could be acquired. In the meantime, when this turns to you in March, we will make it crystal clear that the applicant will not be able to get building permits or commence grading until all the approvals have been acquired.
All right. Thank you, George. At this time, I realize that most of you are here for this matter, and that we have some other items before the board that we need to take up. And so I would allow you to depart, and then we will continue on with our meeting. The vote was, I'm sorry, the vote was unanimous, 5-0. I'm sorry, you couldn't see it. I'm sorry I mentioned it. It was a unanimous vote. Pardon me.
Did you show up? I saw it first. I looked up.
I was surprised it wasn't big.
Covered with cameras.
Is that really true?
Huh?
They couldn't see because of the camera.
Dude. Excuse me?
Good job, Steve. Good job, Steve.
Who are you? Who?
Thanks for rolling over to my turn.
We can proceed with our next item because folks are being quiet as they leave. I appreciate that. This is item 42. It's a request from the Health and Human Services Agency to consider changes to fiscal year 06-07 budget response to updated State of California information approved by the Governor. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Supervisors.
Thanks for waiting.
Good morning, I say. Thank you. John Davis, Health and Human Services Agency. Between the time we actually begin budgets in the last quarter of the preceding year and today, a lot of things happen. And one of the things that happens is that the state actually comes up with their final allocations and makes final grants available to the Health and Human Services Agency. In fact, as you well know, because I come in here in May, some of that funding comes in really late in the year. But the actual planning grants we get on which we build our budgets, they change. They change in October and November, and we got some additional funds, quite a few additional funds. And we took one measure a couple of weeks ago in which we increased our contract with the Workforce Investment Department by $1 million, and that moved a lot of money out to help our Tulare Works clients. The second item that is related to that influx in dollars is that we really do need to add additional staff. There's two places, at least two, in the agency that we cannot contract out. We can't rely on outside community-based organizations to do our bidding, and those two places are before you here in Tulare Works eligibility and in child welfare services. It's not true all over the country. Elsewhere, they actually do contract out some child welfare services, but in California, it's illegal to do so. And we have upon us now some real burdens for both Tulare Works and child welfare services. In terms of Tulare Works first, the caseload. We have about 498 clients in Medicare or Medi-Cal for every eligibility worker. Across the other CalWIN counties, the ones that share our system of delivery, it's about 375. So this new Medi-Cal money, which there is no match, allows us the opportunity really to make up some of that difference and lighten the load on some of the workers. There's other things that are changing, however, that make it even more difficult on us. The Medi-Cal performance standards are in now. That means that there will be fiscal sanctions coming our way if we don't perform in the timelines that we traditionally have, but if there's any more difficulties, we stand to be penalized for that. We have with First Five a partnership in which we're trying to work with getting more and more kids. In fact, it's one of your board's initiatives. We're trying to get more and more kids signed up and covered with insurance. The increase in Medi-Cal money allows us to do a lot of that work because we can do Medi-Cal and healthy family apps, or a good portion of them, with some of these monies. And in fact, we are actually looking to develop a retention unit so that we keep people on Medi-Cal. What happens is that we get them on, they get off. We get them on, they drop off. We need to get out there, get them back, make sure that our plans, even our 2 plans locally, have enough clients and paying clients so that they're actually getting their reimbursement on a continuous basis instead of falling off, losing the revenues, and then us trying to bring them back all the time. So this will allow us to do a strong retention unit. It'll allow us to actually get into the business of keeping people on Medi-Cal once we've gotten them signed up perpetually, and then move into that Healthy Kids initiative a little better. There's also, and you've already heard about this because I've been worried how it would play out in some areas of our services, particularly the elderly and foster care kids, but the federal government or the Congress passed legislation last year that required citizenship requirements before you can get on Medi-Cal. That would have been a very big deal in aging services as it would in foster care. The fact is that both of those have now been revamped by Congress. We don't have to worry about those 2 populations, but for everybody else, we have a new workload requirement, which is to demand to see proof of citizenship. And it's not a simple thing. There's actually 3 tiers to proving your citizenship. So the point is that's a workload increase. That's what some of this money is meant to do or provide for, is more eligibility staff to pick up that load. There's also changes in the TANF reauthorization where we have participation requirements. 2 families, 2-parent families, when there are 2 parents in the family, now have to work 90% of the time or be participating, in our activities 90% of the time, or we get dinged. Same thing is true with the single parents. 50% of the time now is going to be counted. They have to be engaged in activities with our staff or one of our contractors' staff, and all that has to be tracked, or we don't make our money, we actually get sanctioned. And on top of that, some of the math has changed because we didn't used to count the people in sanctions or the people that timed off of welfare. In fact, those are all going into the count now, and the bottom point is to suggest that we literally have to meet a whole new set of performance standards that are much higher. And the caseloads like ours, it looks dismal. It looks dismal even in Tulare County and across the San Joaquin Valley. In fact, we're looking for relief from some of that. But the point is, it's an additional workload. All of these are additional workloads. We want to do them, and we need staff to do them. The last piece, which I think is least important, but it has been an ongoing struggle with us, and you're well aware of it. If we don't spend out our grants, the next year, several other counties gang up and actually redistribute the money. And we've been fighting this battle for 10 years. We've done pretty well at it. Our funds are increasing, as you can see here. The thing that I probably haven't made clear is that it's not just our allocations that are reduced, but realignment monies. And those are what the state sends us down to back out county dollars. So both of those get hit when in fact we don't spend out our allocation. So we have an opportunity, it seems to me, to lighten the caseload of our workers, follow one of the initiatives the board has in getting kids signed up for health care coverage and keeping them signed up, meet our new performance standards, meet our new citizenship requirements that we have to actually find out, our new working levels, and get that all done. And this is the level of staff there at the top of the agenda item under Tulare Works that was requested by Health and Human Services to your board, CWS staff that's there, that increase came in another allocation to us. And this is important because for about 5 years we've been trying very, very hard to shift all of our effort, or a good bit of our effort, to the front end of the system. It's variously been called by the state as redesign, it's differential response. It's basically when we get a call, not to just ignore them, read them out, take the ones that are the worst cases that actually meet the state requirements for us going out and doing something about them, but to have linkages with the community that actually mean that call gets followed up on. That differential response, that different response is what we want to have. We don't want to let any phone call go. If it doesn't meet our criteria for going out, then we have partners in the community who can do that. And we've been building that system for a year. Your board took action in its family preservation grants and its CAPIT grants in the last 2 months to actually start building that front end. This actually builds the piece inside our house that we'll be working with all those community agencies, and that's what the money was sent down for. And you'll see there, too, that there's a bioterrorism administrative aid. Clearly, we've picked up in that area since 9/11. Now we have pandemic flu. There's been presentations to your board. We really need some more support staff. And the final pieces there on administrative staff, these are things that have to do with handling our personnel services for all the new staff we've added this year, last year, and before. There's a cultural competency issue that we want to address internally and start looking at a lot of our productions, a lot of our contact and outreach with the community, and also looking internally to our policies. And then finally, we need some help in the administrative office under the fiscal side of our house. I point out, it's always hard to gauge what we're doing with administration, and when we read administration, it always reads, well, that's not service dollars, and we're always a little suspicious, or at least I am too. We've added approximately, in those areas we've been talking about 250 staff in the last 2 years. Seems like an awful lot of staff, but it's all service staff, with the exception of 5%, and that 5% is 13 staff that we've added to fiscal. If I could keep the ratio at 5%, I'd be very, very happy. Overall, the agency, it's about 11%, a little under 11. So in many ways, while we've added a lot of staff, we haven't at all made a commensurate growth in administration. So with that, I guess I'd entertain questions from your board. Or
Thank you for that very thorough explanation. Any questions?
One quick question. This is a lot of buying. I counted 78, or kind of a lot of bodies here. How many allocated vacant positions do we have now? Are you able to fill these positions? So you're looking at 40, 50 people just in Tulare Works. Can you realistically fill those positions?
It's an ongoing process. The larger the bulk, so to speak, the more activity we can have and the more we can fill them. The way we did it with Child Welfare Services is your board gave me 10 extra positions that weren't funded for a long time, so we could actually kind of get people through the door in the process. It takes a year to train people. So we actually built Child Welfare Services from 67 to 110 social workers now. And even by that standard, we're still 50% below the 2030 study. So we've done a lot of work in 5 years, and it's done like that, where we just expand the allocation list, know we can fund it, and then start bringing people through the door. How much do we have as a vacancy all the time? Out of the 2,200 and some employees that now work for you, or out of the 2,240 some allocations you have, that's the way to say it, you have about 200 people at any one time throughout the entire agency that are not filled.
About 10% vacancy.
About 10%.
Okay.
And this just allows us to grow the activity. I still suspect, to answer your question, a year from now, we'll have 10%. Maybe a little less because your board has made some real inroads on the salary issue, and that's having an effect.
Your question.
If I could add, Mr. Chairman, too, Mr. Davis and I have been working extensively on this, he trying to sell me on the concept, on 2 key points. One is that, trying to be as efficient as possible in a county government where the dollars in translate as to the maximum dollars out to the clients. Mr. Davis came back to me and said, were we not to do this, we would face penalization. We would lose money because we didn't meet certain mandated objectives set for us. The other aspect on the vacancies, very good question. It's not uncommon for a county or a state department to have a number of vacancies, but it's also not uncommon for the administration to say if you have an ongoing vacancy for a number of, over a year, number of years, do you need that position? And so that's something that the CAO's office and the departments are continuing to look at.
So the option would be to maybe take that position and move it somewhere where you have a need that you need more bodies, but
Assuming you have the flexibility of doing it.
if you have flexibility.
Some of the things we've been looking at, too, with the director for HR&D is to look at all the allocations we have. You know, we have a diversity of allocations because we went through a cultural change in welfare when we went from pre-welfare reform to welfare reform, and that took some time to grind through. As we did that, even as we created a new CalWIN system to drive all this the last 5 years, all that created new allocations. Well, we're working with HR&D now to kind of rationalize that and make sure we're not just making problems for ourselves in hiring people as well. Because we know where we are now. It's kind of where we want to be. We're moving down the road to self-sufficiency. It's no longer an eligibility just say no program. It takes time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I would think, John, that there would be an opportunity for our present employees maybe to move up the ladder, if I could say that, into another higher position. Would that be a potential
That would
benefit?
probably be how we do this, because as soon as you open these up in our process, the people who feel they're qualified immediately come out and want to take those positions. And yes, they'll probably be at lower levels.
Plus, there's the addition of a number of jobs. Whenever we have industry move in, we always ask how many jobs. And we talked about the dairies. Dairy jobs 40, maybe 60, whatever the number. But now then we're talking about some pretty good jobs from the standpoint of benefits, working conditions, and like you said, the board has been making an effort. And John, I'm always astonished at you and your staff coming up with these major changes, and I always look very quickly at the financial impact. In this case here, there is no net county cost. So I commend you for that, because I just made the motion that we approve item 42.
Second. Motion and a second.
1, 2,
Please cast
3,
your
and
votes.
et cetera. Apparently you guys don't want me to talk anymore today. Is that what you're telling me?
Okay.
So moved, John. I'll vote for it.
All right, unanimous. Thank you, John.
Thank you very
Made your
much.
case well. Of course, we were worn down before you got here. Probably helped.
Should have asked for more, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, Phil should have read the agenda before you came up.
Okay, item 43 is a request from the County Administrative Office to approve the memorandum of understanding between the University of California Cooperative Extension and Tulare County under the provisions of the State of California Education Code. Mr. Sullins, welcome, sir. And
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. My name is Lynn Gregory. I'm from the County Administrator's Office. We're here today to seek approval of a memorandum of understanding between University of California Cooperative Extension and the county. This updates our current memorandum of understanding. As you're aware, we've worked in cooperation with the University of California Cooperative Extension since 1918, and they provide a variety of services to the county. I'm going to go ahead and let Jim Sullins talk about the services that they provide and what they're currently doing.
thank you, Lynn, and thank you, Jeff.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Haddix, and certainly the venerable Mr. Maples. I looked that word up.
Can I take a moment to ponder that before we go further?
This item was originally on the consent calendar, and then I saw that what you had to deal with today, and I thought perhaps you might like something a little easier to talk about. And it gives me an opportunity to update you on what's happening in our department. The department is the University of California UC Cooperative Extension, and we have a division. We're under the land-grant university system, and as most everybody I'm surely knows, the three land-grant universities are UC Berkeley, where the first farm was, the UC University of California farm, UC Riverside, and UC Davis. That division that we operate under is Agricultural and Natural Resources. It's composed of the Ag Experiment Station, which really is not a location. Ag Experiment Station are scientists that have USDA appointments that work in agriculture. Cooperative Extension, the organization that I'm part of, and the Natural Reserve System. The mission of Agricultural and Natural Resources is to serve California through the creation, development, and application of knowledge in agriculture, natural, and human resources. We do this through the University of California Cooperative Extension on the county level with more than about 260 county-based advisors and 150 campus-based specialists. We're in 50 counties, And of course, as already indicated, we started this office in Tulare County in 1918. Mr. Maples, you weren't on that thing.
I was here when it...
We try to do this in full partnership with federal, state, county, and private sectors in research and educational outreach. And the advisor's role is to develop programs tailored to address local issues. We do this through meetings and conferences, workshops, demonstrations, field days, the whole gamut for the education. But even more important, I think, that you see in California is our advisors are involved in problem-solving research. We also have a large group of volunteers to extend our cooperative extension programs. We work closely with our specialists on the different campuses that we've already mentioned. We also have research stations that we work with closely. In Tulare County, we have Lynn Cove Research Station with its citrus research. Close by is Kearney Ag Center with its research, Westside Field Station, and Shafter. We have projects in all of those field stations where we try to solve local problems. The point is we try to discover solutions to problems so we can share it. And I'm sure this has kept you awake at night, wondering about what our core issues may be that we're working with. And I am going somewhere with this, besides trying to bore you at this close to lunch. We have 4 areas that we work in specifically in cooperative extension: agricultural policy and pest management, ag productivity, human resources, natural resources, and animal agriculture. We have everyone has a limited budget. University of California has a limited budget. So we've selected high priority areas. In ag and policy and pest management, that's invasive species and pest management. In our ag productivity, it's food safety, sustainability and viability of agriculture. Our human resources priority is youth development, and in natural resources and animal agriculture, it's water quality. A little lower down, but still important, is our biosecurity, organic production, soil quality, waste management, childhood obesity, human nutritional status, air quality, land use, sustainable use of natural resources, water supply allocation, and wildland fire. This is where we're putting our priorities on the university and the funding for cooperative extension and ag experiment station. Now, keeping that in mind, where does that fit into the strategic business plan? And I'm sure this is what's keeping you up at night. How would our university priorities fit into the business plan that the Board of Supervisors... It has concerned you, especially since we've had these other issues today. Under strategic initiatives that the Board have selected, under safety and security, we have found that our programs do fit within the strategic business plan for the county. We promote personal responsibility for public safety with our pesticide and agricultural safety training classes. We've over 1,000 agricultural workers in English and Spanish each year. And we conduct and implement research and education programs in food safety. We plan and provide coordinated emergency preparedness. We've been trained now, both for the bioterrorism. There's 3 of us in the department that are getting our certification. We particularly have roles with the animal industry, should bioterrorism strike there, with our dairy advisor and myself. We're working to provide an adequate and safe water supply. Water supply and air quality is protected through research and education efforts, where we've strived to reduce and improve the distribution of nitrogen applied to crops. And we talked a lot about that today here. Promote and use environmentally safe pesticides. And we also develop and extend information on the use of nitrogen from dairy storage ponds at agronomic rates. That was a key issue that's been part of this dairy plan. Economic well-being. We'll continue to work to protect the county's agricultural-based economy. And we're doing that through sustainability and economic strengthening of the industry. We've developed a new dried on the vine raisin program that has now caught on through many areas of Tulare County. The people that do this just amaze me. I mean, this was one of my advisors, Bill Peacock, woke up in the middle of the night and said, "Why didn't I think of this earlier?" 15 years ago. And woke up in the middle of the night and actually realized there was a way to culturally change the way that we do existing vineyards and start doing dried on the vine raisins. Almost 50% of the production is going that direction. It's amazing, and it saves a lot of labor. We have an advisor working to develop height-reduced orchards, specialty crops. We're growing blueberries now in Tulare County. We're growing papayas at Kearney Ag Center, and we'll be seeing those, I think, in Tulare County. Blackberries, new optional crops that will increase the diversity of the opportunities for our, especially for our small farms, especially farms. And we also have ongoing research in our agronomic crops. Quality of Life is our 4-H program. You can see there we have 775 youth participating, 300 in 4-H curriculum projects. Are very pleased with the numbers that we have in our 4-H. We also have the Youth Food Stamp Nutrition Program, now in 22 schools with over 3,000 students. This is targeted at obesity and also at increasing exercise and tying those together. We have several programs that encourage the quality education opportunities for our residents and expanded food and nutrition and home base. Recreational and cultural opportunities. If you haven't had a chance to visit the Bravo Lake Botanical Gardens in Wood Lake, I urge you to do so next time it's up. It's a tremendous project, and now it's going into being one of the heritage areas for agriculture in Tulare County. On organizational performance, we have a critical position that I'm going forward with this year. I'm hoping we get funded again. We're short one horticulture position for olives, prunes, and walnuts. That position's been vacant for about 3 years. We've been trying to cover it with outside resources and spreading ourselves pretty thin. Our Master Gardeners program is growing, and anyway, we have captured funds for video conferencing equipment. We have a video conference capability now at the Ag Building, and we've also increased our website presence. So with that, our general program efforts center on agriculture and natural resources, community development, 4-H youth. Here's an example of some of one of the orchards where we're bringing trees into bearing 2 to 3 years earlier with new pruning techniques. So you'll see that up around Dinuba. That work was done by Kevin Day. It's had a tremendous impact. He's also done a lot of work on light and on the impact of light in our orchards and in our trees. And we're looking at increasing returns of $2 to $4 a box in fruit. Citrus program, over 110,000 acres of citrus in Tulare County and increasing. And we've had work in early detection of pathologies such as Beck navel decline, lemon fungus decline. Viticulture, we already talked a little bit about the dryad on the vine and what that means. I would also point out that that reduces air quality issues whenever you don't have to disc the centers and you don't have to burn trays. Blueberries and papayas. Crops that we did not traditionally see in Tulare County for the last 5 years. Corn stunt disease, we're still working on that problem and its impact on the silage industry. We're also very concerned about the resources, controlling the how much nitrogen is being applied to our vegetables and other crops. We have a new disease, pathology, tomato fruit pox that we're working on. And in cotton, there's been some tremendous stats. Cotton acreage is going down. However, the production per acre continues to increase. And we've also, with the influx of precision agriculture, we're getting more into conservation tillage in our agronomics, reducing air quality and dependence on energy. You notice we had during our heat spell, when we lost so many cows, those cows that were in facilities such as these with heat misters and fans had a much higher survival rate. Dairy innovations, we're looking at the issues that we've got with our lagoons and how to spread the manure in the dairy water.
We should have called you earlier.
Yeah.
Of course, you might not have made it out of the building.
That's true. Invasive species, we're part of the weed management area, and I have a program for control of yellow star thistle. We work with turf grasses. Heron Express is a program that first 5 funded. It was a tremendous program. We had outreach efforts. It's still ongoing with classes and follow-up literature from the time a child is first conceived all the way up to, I believe it's 2 years of age. 4-H youth development. I think most every board member here has helped us with our awards nights. That Wood Lake Pride that we were talking about, there's a couple of pictures from there. And this is some of the commodities that they've had out of there, those young kids. That's a wonderful youth program that's gone on there. Our Master Gardeners continues to grow. Matter of fact, they're maintaining the roses around the county complex. That's become one of our main workshop areas, and we get large turnouts for that. On funding, this is a 10-year picture of our funding. We are funded both federally, state, and of course, the base of that is the commitment from Tulare County. We've been from about 1.3 million up to this last year at 1.6, low 1.6. So that's a quick overview of what's going on in our department, how we tie in with the county, and try how we put together our priorities with the county's priorities. And if you have any questions, we'd be glad to answer them.
Any questions? Thank you very much, Jim. Good presentation. I am sorry that more people didn't see that presentation because it was quite excellent and it would be good information. But it's the way things go.
Send it to Oakland.
Yeah. Okay. Now we have this matter for action to approve the MOU.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion second. Please cast your votes.
Even with the sarcastic remarks he made.
Vote is unanimous. And how was that back in 1918?
I don't know.
44, request from the Resource Management Agency to approve the operational plan for the motor pool facility of the Central Road Yard. Mr. Hash, are you giving this presentation?
In partnership with my colleagues in the back. Yes, good morning. Henry Hash, Resource Management Agency. Again, I think this is the moment you've been all waiting for after exciting morning. And indeed, really, this is an issue that the county has been working on for over 12 years. We are very thankful to your board to allow us to bring this before you today to hopefully move the direction that we have been talking about. The agenda has been revised. You do have a revised copy of it, which is broken actually in two. The funding part will be coming to you next month. And we are here to answer any questions that you may have. You directed us at the last meeting that we had earlier this year to come back with an operational plan, and basically we have an operational plan at what happens and what we will do after the relocating a motor pool from the existing site to our central yard, Lovers Lane. We are here to answer any and all questions that you may have. So if I may, I would like just to bring to you a few of the positive features of the relocation, that if your board approves this, the vehicle can be transferred to our new central yard or new facility either by the operator, or they can call and somebody would go and pick it up and bring it, and when it's ready, it can be brought back to them. We are also going to have a facility and a waiting area if the employees decide to wait, if the wait is not long, with a computer ready for them to do some office work, check their emails, and things of that nature. When the vehicle is ready, it will also be cleaned and washed at the car wash that we will have. That would be eliminating the need for the operator of that vehicle or any vehicle to actually take a trip to car wash, saving much time. Yeah, I believe efficiency is a big factor in here. Once we add up these two operations, we will find in time that we may not need as many employees, as many mechanics as we presently do, as we are going to cross-train them and have them ready to help in one area or in a larger equipment. With that, we are here. I am here with Mr. John Brew, Mike Millhouse, and who else? We have Mr. Elzin here, Mr. Finney, and I appreciate all the RMA people that are waiting here after we lost our big audiences. We also have Mark Kristen, who's been really running the motor pool for a very, very long time. We are open for any questions you may have.
Other questions of members? Mr. Cox?
Yeah, I mean, all I really see here, we haven't really discussed the reload. You have a few times said the relocation of motor pool. That's not in what we have. What we have here is an explanation of how you're going to get cars from point A to point B, correct?
Yes, sir, it is. We did have it all in one agenda, but it was broken down into two. The next one, the funding part, perhaps Mr. Haddix.
My point, I'm not wowed by this. You know, I look at this and say, okay, but I don't see a significant change. And my first thought was, well, do we have to hire an employee just to shuttle cars? And do we have to hire an employee just to shuttle cars?
It all really depends of the need. Are we talking about 1 or 2 times per day, or 20 or 30 times per day? When we came before your board at the last meeting, your direction to us was to come back with an operation plan. This is what it is. How are you going to operate? How are we going to get the vehicles from where they are to the new facility? And this is really the operational plan that we have. So we have put in one place, and we come back to you with the funding at a later date.
If I might, just, to follow up on the comment by Mr. Cox, it seems to me that there's work to be done with this as you go forward. In other words, you take this to the various agencies that you serve, and then you will work out those kinds of details, what that means. Because in my mind, right now, the benefit of hiring someone for a lesser cost to ferry vehicles versus right now what we do is we have some very highly paid people who are doing this job. That they're taking their time out to go have their car washed or have it worked on, and then instead of them spending their time doing this sort of thing, they could be really working towards what their job application or job requirements are. So I see this as being, yes, there may be additional people, but I think in terms of the service that can be provided, consequently from doing this could be multiplied. But I do think this is something that has to be taken. I mean, obviously, until we have this is part of an overall process. We have to actually do the construction, do the actual physical work that needs to be in the capital part of it, and then this is the operational part of it. And you have to work in conjunction with the various departments to refine it. But I'm very excited about the ultimate consequence, I think, of this, because I think we're going to find a much greater efficiency in terms of how we deliver this service, and we will be able to do it, I believe, at a lesser cost, and it will provide more of a benefit to the people who are, when you've got the district attorney, attorneys that are driving their cars around.
All I can go off is what's here.
Right.
That's not
well,
here.
It's limited. It's limited.
But when you put it in that light, we've got attorneys dropping their cars off for service while they're still being attorneys. I got some eyebrow raises from the attorneys there. I can see where this would be beneficial.
Supervisor Cox, also, our intent is not to go ahead and hire full-time people with all benefits. They're going to be part-time people with low pay, and they'll be called as needed basis. So the cost is going to be minimal as we need it. Just going back to
licenses too.
To what you stated, the benefit is great as a result of this. Not only that we will reduce the liabilities if you have a vehicle that has deficiencies, which are bad tire or bad brakes, really we are liable. With this, we will make sure everything is monitored. And as far as the cost, let me give you an example without being specific what department. I know some of our county departments go out right now for oil change, and now has gone a little bit beyond oil change, perhaps changing an air filter. We do that, and our air filter price or the cost to our customer goes anywhere from $4.50 to $10. We happen to see a bill in a car that would charge $49 for an air filter. So you can imagine that the savings that the county will make. One thing I would like to ask you is that we do already have an ordinance that all the county vehicles to be maintained in the county facilities, but we have not always enforced that. Once this is done, I think it would be helpful if all the vehicles, unless we cannot repair, go to this facility.
Well, I really believe that this is just the tip of the iceberg, and And I think we've had discussions with CO and that department over a number of years that when I say the tip of the iceberg, I think as a part of this is who uses the vehicles, who has a right to use them, who's getting allowances, who's getting mileage. I think that we've got a long way to go before we come to a conclusion, but you guys laugh at me whenever Jim makes remarks about my age and things of that nature, but Mark, you and I have been talking about this for 15 years or more when we'd pull in, and you need to have a medal today for staying with this thing, but today is my last meeting, Mark, and I told you I'd get it done. And you just remember that. But at the same time, on a serious note, I understand what Mr. Cox is saying, but I really believe that working with Henry and with our staff, that there are a lot of areas we can go in that needs to be reviewed and brought back to the board for action, because I think it's being abused, and I think not only things that we know about, but I think this is just tip of the iceberg of things that we could do.
Mr. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, Ms. Conway.
Well, I just had a quick question. Is Mark going with us when we do this big facility, or?
Moving Mark out.
We are trying to convince him to do that, Supervisor Conway. However, he has rumors tell me that he is planning to retire in March. We haven't decided on the year yet. The month.
Perhaps you should speak to Mr. Finney. And when is this slated, all is this going to happen, Henry? If you said that, I missed it.
No, Supervisor, we haven't. The funding part will be coming to you as a separate agenda item. We had it all combined, but it was broken. Next month.
Oh.
And as soon as your board approves it, we are ready to move forward. We have been working with CEO's office, Brian Summers. We have hired an architect per your direction at that last meeting. So we are really ready to go forward with this one.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, this being the last motion that I will make as a member of this board, it would be my privilege to move approval item 44, approving the occupational plan for the motor pool facility at Central Road Yard.
Privilege for me to receive.
Everybody can stand to that motion.
Second.
We have a motion second. Please cast your votes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to clarify, just for the record, so that there's no confusion, since we've had a lot of discussion about CEQA today. Your board is essentially giving concept approval as opposed to project approval. Again, lawyers' semantics. When you're asked to give project approval, that will actually trigger the requirement for CEQA review, et cetera. So we're not there yet.
This is only a part of the process.
Tentative approval?
Yes.
Which is, thank you, Mr. Chairman, which is part of the point I wanted to make. The council clearly stated, and that is that this is an ongoing process. There are still some other mechanisms for shuttling that Mr. Hash has talked about, such as maybe shuttling with vehicles versus bodies, and it'll evolve over time. Mr. Cox, you had asked earlier about, is this the whole thing? It was actually at my direction to Mr. Hash that we separate capital from operational. Those are two very distinct subjects worthy of their own evaluation, not to be confused. And so these are all component parts to make up the overall puzzle.
Good. Very good. Thank you, Henry.
Thank you.
And now we come to the very exciting part of the meeting for public comments. Anyone wishing to address the board on matters that are not on today's agenda but within our jurisdiction are invited to come forward and give us your name and address. Seeing and hearing no one. Close the public comment period, and now we bring it to board matter items. Ms. Conway?
I'm sure I could think of something, but no.
All right. Cox?
I'm fried as well.
Mr. Sheet is worn out. We know he's been up fighting
We've
frost.
had a freeze the last couple nights. Started all the machines last night and went to bed, so I don't know really how cold it got at the end. But I think there's minimal damage if there's any in the citrus belt. I couldn't help but over Supervisor-elect Mike Ennis's laugh when we brought up the subject of Maple's age, Supervisor Maple's age. I'd like to remind everybody that the oldest person on the board in January is going to be Mr. Ennis. I don't know if it's the water over there, but there must be a late maturity date.
Mr. Maples, do you have anything?
Well, I'll have an opportunity on the 9th of January to make remarks, but I would like to make a note. It's funny how life is, but I see Mike Millhouse out here. and I rambled a little bit this morning about Pumpkin Center and all of that, and so I appreciate your patience. But I would point out to the board that back at the time when I lived in Pumpkin Center, Mike's uncle ran the dairy in which we lived on. And so my job was to go over and get the milk in the evening. And so I survived, I guess, all right with that. But then eventually I had the pleasure of having Mike as a student. And so it's just funny how life, brings itself around in a cycle. But I see Mike and I think about those days with my balloon tires riding over to the dairy to get the milk. But
If you live long enough, huh?
yeah, if you live long enough for him. Anyway, thank you. I have nothing else.
Thank you, Mr. Maples. I really have nothing I want to add today. Council, we have some closed session items?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we do. You have items A through F on your regular agenda and addendum. Item B is off agenda, and I do not anticipate any announcements.
Do you anticipate how long it will take to handle these matters?
The addendum item, I think, is probably the most substantial discussion. The other items, I don't believe, are going to take very long at all.
What's the board's pleasure? I'd like to go out and have lunch and then come back, I think, and do it. So we'll do that.
Used to work in 12 hours.
Do you have staff coming back? Should we tell them to come back at a particular?
I would tell them about 1:45 or so, probably. Thank you all.
Always enjoyed it.
That was one day.